in that direction.
Okay, planning board, we are live. We are recording. Phone lines will remain off. Go for it.
Thank you very much. Good evening and welcome to the East Hampton Town Planning Board meeting of September 28th, 2022. We have on tonight's agenda five matters on for site plan review. So let's get right to it. The first one we're going to do is 51 South Edgemere LLC. That is Will, you got that, and Ms. Sharon is on the video somewhere there. There she is. Good evening. Welcome.
You're muted.
Unmute. Randy, can you hear us?
Yeah, sure.
You're.
Now we can't hear. He's talking, but we can't hear him.
Randy, you've got to turn your mic on.
He's not muted. Look at it.
If Randy's lost his voice, that'll be on the front page. I heard that. Okay. All right. We'll go ahead. Oh, and Randy, you better be on because this is one of yours, this application.
This is
Yeah, 51-7.
Oh, right.
51-7.
That's right.
Randy, can you hear us?
He can hear.
Can you hear me now?
All right, 100%. Go ahead.
Yeah. This is an application that was previously approved, as you can see on these plans here. And now this is the revised plan. The original approval was to make interior renovations to a motel and restaurant, changes to the roof and facade, the demolition of an exterior bar and staircase, and reconfiguration of the entranceway to the restaurant, along with remove a concrete patio and the addition of outdoor showers on the first and second floor of the motel. The applicant is now requesting a modification of the originally approved interior layout after a certificate of occupancy inspection determined that the current layout is very slightly different from what was originally approved. In the planning board's previous evaluation, the size and amount of seats in the interior bar was heavily discussed. In the proposed modification of the seating, they reduced the size of the bar and the number of seats from 14 to 10 while retaining the same number of overall seats at 200. And for the most part, keeping the interior layout the same as I'll show you on the plans here. This is the one they have submitted now, the final design. And this is the one that was previously approved. As you can see, they're very similar, just slightly different, but they're the same number of seats. Just one other thing to mention is that in the original approval, there was a condition that on these originally submitted plans that they changed. This area was originally designated as lounge area. It has now been changed. On the original approval, there was then a revised survey plan, which is this one that shows it as upper dining area. That was a condition of approval in the original approval. However, in this new submitted final design plan, it's been changed to say back to a upper lounge area. So the board should discuss whether they want that rectified so as to match the original condition of approval.
Are there 4 new tables in that area immediately below the bar?
Yes.
Where were they before?
Yeah, I realized this about a half an hour before the meeting. But if you toggle back, so this is the plan that was approved. I apologize if you can go back to the approved plan. It's tough to see. I apologize for that. The total, so the bar had 14 seats here. Basically this, again, I apologize at how faint this is. This was the area around the bar. There were 14 seats here, and then there was a big 10-seat table here. This total area was 60 seats. And then again, as Will noted, it was a condition of approval that they submit a revised plan that said dining area to clarify that this is to be for dining. I guess you get toggle back to the new plan. Much clearer. The bar area around the bar increases overall by 10 seats to 70. However, the number of seats at the bar decreased from 14 to 10. And then again, as Will mentioned, it says lounge area. I apologize, those weren't in the memorandum. I kind of just realized that before the meeting, doing a double check on the plan, but we wanted to make you aware of that.
What does that do to the parking?
Nothing. The overall number of seats is not changing. The number of interior seats and then the number of seats on the patio is not changing. It's just a reconfiguration of the interior. Our position still stands. There's no net increase in seats. The number that are actually at the bar is decreasing. As long as they change that notation to reflect the board's previous concern, we're okay with it, but I wanted to make you aware of that, and I apologize that wasn't originally in the memorandum.
Do all those seats, the 10 added seats in the dining area, do they all come from the bar or somewhere else?
No, I actually, well, it's again, tough to show, but on the original plan, there, I had it circled, so these are all labeled 8. These are benches. They went to 6, 6, and 6, so that's 2 less, so a total of 6 less. Then I believe this one, which is 10, went to 8. And then one of these, I think this one that was 8 went to 6. So that was the total 10 reduction in this area. And then there's 10 more mixed between those tables here. Again, accounting for the fact that there's 4 less at the
The
bar.
size of those banquets change?
I'm sorry?
The size of those banquets that went from?
No, the actually, this is called the lower dining area, and this is the upper.
Yeah.
The lower dining area, the configuration is identical. They basically just removed some seats from some of these areas and then added these smaller tables.
If they
in that
remove
area.
seats from the banquet, those 3 on the top there,
Mhm.
but they're the same exact size, right? They haven't changed the size, they're just sort of changing the number of people who can sit at it. Is that
Correct.
it?
Yeah, as I measure it.
And that's
Okay.
where they, and then having reduced the number of people that can sit at the banquet, that enables them to put 4 tables, maybe it's even 6 tables, because there's a couple of 2 tops there, that allows them to put 6 tables down on or up on the upper dining area.
Yes, that along with actually shrinking the physical dimensions of the bar. So the bar takes up less of that area, and they're proposing to then, within that larger open area, add more tables.
Eric, I think picking up on that idea, I mean, the plan seems to indicate cushions, right? There are 8 on the ones on either side, on the 2 ends, and there are 10 in the one in the middle.
Where are you looking?
Right on the banquettes, at the
Yeah,
banquettes
so
at the top.
One eye, you be able to count. Good eye.
Well, they're proposing 6, 6, and 8 in the middle.
But those 6, 6, and 8 haven't changed the physical size that they were in the prior application.
From what I can tell, no.
It's just that they're going to seat fewer people out.
That's correct.
And it's bench seating in that area.
Correct.
Okay.
It's a code enforcement issue.
I guess it is.
It becomes a code enforcement issue.
Well, it's something you guys should discuss. And again, I apologize for not flagging it earlier. And I apologize to the applicant's representative as well.
Another one.
Well, one of the problems that we had when we reviewed this, and the reason we asked them to change the nomenclature
Yep.
from lounge to dining area was we didn't want people to hang out and congregate in that bar area. Well, you can't do that now, the way they've got it set up. So that's really adhering more to our wishes in that sense.
I don't know if it was about congregating. I know it was more about putting more people into that square footage.
Oh, I think Lou's exactly right. Our
Yeah.
concern was that there was, we're gonna put a table here, clear it out, it's gonna be a bar.
I think it was both points. It was just, the overall, as I remember the conversation, kind of the overall concern was just, is this interior layout turning this into more of a bar than a restaurant? And I think that those were both considerations, the openness of the upper dining area, but also if you toggle back to the original plan, again, I apologize, it's so light, but so there was there was this table here, but there was all this open area around the bar. And as you can see, the bar was, not against the wall. It's one of these bars where people could stand on all sides of it. Now, if you go back to the other one, the bar is shrunk a bit and it's against the wall here, so you only have the three sides in that configuration. So
I'm pretty sure if they offered this the last time they were before us, we would have all been very excited, so
Yeah.
we should be careful not to be like, oh, well, now,
And also, I don't want to put words in their mouth, we'll hear from them, but is it possible that they did this, or one of the reasons they did this is because they thought it was too tight on the banquettes to sit all those people, so now
Yeah, they would have
it's more comfortable. So I think we should really have
So we have
an open mind.
No, did you give me anything else on this?
No, that was pretty much it.
Okay. Ms. Sharman?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate being here virtually. I'm just finishing my first bout with COVID, actually. So I'm doing much better, and I'm happy to see you all. So yes, Mr. Cortese was spot on with some of the reasons that the applicant chose to go with this new format. Ultimately, the main issue when they started demolition and started construction was the original bar just was not feasible to build in this space. I think it was some structural issues, might have been about weight. And ultimately, I think the applicant had felt, based on the feedback from this board, that they were doing something that would be welcomed with open arms. In the original plan, you would have been able to walk around the bar, and it would have lent itself, frankly, to standing patronage and that feared nightclub kind of vibe. I do apologize that lounge is on the new plan. We can absolutely amend that. That is absolutely not intentional by any means. When it comes to borrowing seating from the banquettes, you'll see on the original plan, I think it was the architect's intention just to kind of eat up the number to portray the 200 seats, but you'll see that they were counting seats that are on the corner of each table. So truthfully, to seat adults comfortably in those tables, it's now much more accurate. No one's going to want to sit on the corner of that table. It also borrowed seats from a couple other spaces on the right-hand side. So ultimately, the new plan reflects less of a bar nightclub format and more of what's true to the space, which is, and the intention, which is dining. Also, I know when the planning board member or planning department members came to look at the space, it was my first time seeing the furniture in this space. The furniture in this space is quite substantial. So it really lends itself truly to what I think we're all on board with, which is a beautiful new restaurant for people to be seated nicely, enjoying nice meals and cocktails. So the new layout is certainly pushes that towards more perfect compliance in the future. And, certainly in the scheme of any dining room, you might be worried about additional people at additional tables, but ultimately that is a compliance issue and they will always need to stick to their 200.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Randy,
Yep.
you're on.
I don't see, if Lou likes this, I like it. No, I don't see any real problem with this modification. Can you hear me?
yes.
Yeah.
You have the final design? Which one? Oh, the resolution. Actually, it's the one. Do you have the resolution, Randy?
Oh,
yeah, and I'll just make a point about that, because the applicants are, as Ms. Choron said, we've been performing inspections of the property for compliance with the zoning board decision and the planning board decision. They're basically ready to go as long as this board is okay with this modification. We put a modification resolution on for you this evening. It does not have a condition that the applicant submit a revised plan that identifies the upper area as upper dining instead of upper lounge. If that's something you'd like to continue from the previous approval, you could adopt the modification resolution with that condition noted as a change.
Now let's see first if any other members have anything they want to add on this. Anyone? No? Okay. In that case, Randy, would you like to read in the resolution? As modified, we all want the suggested modification.
Yes.
With the suggested modification that the upper areas called, the word lounge will be deleted from the plan.
And that's a condition. Yep. So moved.
We need a little bit more.
Let me see.
You know, in that case,
It wasn't part
we're gonna deputize Sharon.
Okay, good. I don't have the resolution.
51 South Edgemere LLC site plan, tax map number 300-52-1-1.2. This is a resolution to amend the previous approval. We move for its adoption with the condition that the site plan indicates the upper as dining area instead of lounge.
All those in favor?
Second.
Oh, sorry. Deputize, to remind me to say second. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Yes, so enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next one is 92 South Euclid, and Will's got that one. Is the applicant here on 92 South Euclid? Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, that you were associated. And Sharon, you got that? Go ahead.
Okay, so this was an application that was previously proposed and approved to construct a two-story, 1058 square foot commercial building with a second floor affordable apartment and basement. The planning board the applicant also subsequently requested a modification to the previously approved application to add 3 AC units to the eastern side of the building and to add 4 above ground propane tanks to be added in the trash enclosure. The board reviewed this modification at its September 14th meeting and determined that the applicant should provide information pertaining to generated noise from the air conditioning units, that the applicant would look into alternative locations and additional screening and sound attenuation for the air conditioning units. And the board would decide whether or not to require a public hearing upon submission of those items. They did submit revised plans that now move the proposed air conditioning units to the rear of the building rather than in the side yard setbacks. This is actually in keeping with the other buildings and the surrounding properties in the area. At the last meeting, the board required that the applicants submit information pertaining to generated noise levels. They did submit a spec sheet that identified a noise output of 72 to 74 decibels, whereas the maximum permitted under section 185 is 70 during the daytime and 55 at night at a property line. The board should discuss the possibility of requiring additional sound attenuating features such as an enclosure or recessing the units into the ground. It is noted, though, that there is additional vegetative screening also proposed, and the AC units have been relocated further away from the property line. Should the reworking of the AC units satisfy the board's requirement, they should discuss whether or not to waive the public hearing if the application is deemed complete. Discuss whether additional screening or sound attenuation is necessary, and then if they do and deem the application complete, discuss whether to waive the public hearing.
So how far is it from the side yard?
It's now 10 feet.
10 feet now? Okay.
Katie OCP from East End Land Planning. I think Will covered everything, but the one thing that he didn't was we were at 3 and now we're at 2. So they did the AC units got a little bit bigger so we could fit them there. Otherwise they would not fit. So.
Okay, in that case, Sharon, yours?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great that they're further away, but they're still close, right? And the decibels of the AC units are what's allowed there. So I don't know what the sound attenuations that can be done, but I would suggest can you put them enclose them and cover them in some way to just mitigate the sound?
So there's going to be landscaping around it that is on the landscape plan. We did look at actually putting it in between the window well and where the ramp is and sinking it in the ground. but there's not enough room there. And in terms of a fence, when I spoke with the AC guy, he said that doesn't always help. Sometimes it makes it worse because the sounds, rather than it being expanded, it's going in one spot and going up. But if that is something you guys want, we can. It seems like everywhere else just has landscaping around the AC units in the area. So they're trying to be in keeping with the surrounding neighborhood.
How about the public hearing?
I mean, that's kind of what I suggested last week, wasn't I? Because it was still so close, but I just feel like everybody has these units and they're all on top of each other.
I do, and it does meet the setback. I mean, the setback,
Right.
correct me if I'm wrong, is 10 feet, right? Yeah, so.
I probably did not need a public hearing for this. I think.
Around the table, anybody, do they want to add specifically about the public hearing?
Sam,
Go ahead, Randy.
regarding the noise, the backs up on the alley, so I'm not that worried. I don't see that there's that much of an issue with noise for the neighboring properties, but I'm wondering about the apartments. If they use, is that deck right there next to the AC units? Is that for the apartments? And I think there's also a second story balcony. So that might be the only reason to do some more sound work.
Sounds like from what the applicant just said, though, that if there's any kind of hard baffling around it, that you're going to send the noise of the unit straight into the air.
Yeah.
And impacting directly that terrace. So it may not achieve and it may equal that thing you're concerned about.
I guess I'm surprised that the standard AC unit exceeds our sound guidelines.
Well, this-
honestly, but obviously.
But I think that what was submitted was what's coming out of the machine, not taking into account distance or landscaping.
Mhm.
So, I mean, look, I think you have to meet our code. So have the sound, I'm on a play sound engineer, I suspect that actually you probably are okay at the property line, I don't know. But I would think that we need something from a sound engineer to say that. And so I don't want to guess whether a fence makes it worse or better for landscaping, but it's a calculation anybody can do. And I think you have to show that you're code compliant. Randy brings a fair point about the apartment, but I am concerned about the property line because it's something that we always do. And I think it's achievable here. So, and then thank you I think you listened to us last time. You produced the units, moving to a place we suggested. So I think that, unfortunately, in modifications, I think it's a successful, plan here, presuming you are, meet the decibel level of the property line.
So you want the applicant to come back with more information on that?
It's just something we always require. If sound is an issue, we say at least me, I say, we have a code that says what you can have at the property line. Show us that you have it, for the next one, instead of guessing in terms of.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree with you. The only thing I would add is that this building, the problem that the air conditioning sound would create would be for the tenants of the apartments. And the landlord to those apartments is the person who's creating that problem of the noise. So it would indirectly hurt them if the apartment becomes less valuable because of the noise. So I don't know if it's circuitous.
Well,
But I agree with Ian that we should really follow the code. If it doesn't meet the code, then, we should find
The
out.
apartment is straight above, so it's not going to be the property line.
well, the code doesn't speak to the apartment above, and I think Lou's probably right. Like, figure it out for yourself whether that's the right thing to build, but the property line is something we're supposed to protect. So
Exactly.
Can you bring up the overhead?
And I think it's very achievable in this case. I don't think we're asking. In fact, it's probably already there. We need something
Yeah, I mean, I believe most AC units are between 72 and 82.
Right, I think that
So
you
they're-
submitted what the output is without considering any other stuff. I think you're probably there. We just need to confirm that.
Do you have anything on that?
Nothing additional, you know,
I just want to get a
nothing
sense of what's around.
other than what you've already discussed. This is basic.
Yeah,
Everything is vacant.
I know.
It's gonna be built.
It's gotta be. That one's good.
You got it.
Well, the board, thank you very much.
As far as the public hearing goes, I don't think I think because you meet the setbacks now, if you meet the noise standards, I don't think we need a public hearing because I think it's very straightforward, but I do think we need the noise.
So we'll come back to us with that.
Sounds good. Have a good night.
Next, 24 Three Mile Harbor. Eric, Sharon, has that, and the applicant is.
Okay, let me just get the visuals up. I'll start with the aerial. Then I'll pull up the plans as I'm speaking. Okay, so the ZBA has granted the necessary relief for the project, with the exception of a second store deck for the affordable apartments. The applicants have amended the plans accordingly to reflect that change. The truck loading space and truck loading area that was originally along 3 Mile Harbor Road has been relocated. That we see as a significant improvement over the previous proposal. Excuse me, it's been relocated to the southern end of the property. Sorry, I'm trying to pull up the plans here while I'm doing this. No. I can never walk and chew gum at the same time. I can't read numbers and pull up these plans. So zoom in a little. Okay, this will give you a better visual. Because as I said, the applicants have slightly amended the overall layout from the last time you've seen it. So originally that truck loading space was going to be up along 3 Mile Harbor Road. It actually would have required trucks to stop in 3 Mile Harbor Road and back up into that space. That's been removed. The truck loading area is now, you can see a hash mark in the lower right-hand side of the screen adjacent to the principal building. We prefer that location greatly over that previous proposal. So the fire marshal will still need to review this renovated design, see whether or not a fire lane is required in front of the building, and also check for ADA accessibility. So that information is pending. A revised comprehensive landscaping plan has been submitted. This plan, among other things, removes all of the plantings that were previously proposed in the 3 Mile Harbor Road right-of-way, which hopefully you can see the landscaping plan now. Again. So originally up in the top right-hand corner, everywhere where you see this, these dots pattern here, which is now grass proposed, that had dense screening proposed in there. However, the applicants discussed this with the county, and as we suspected and mentioned in a previous memorandum, it's not their property, it's county property. It's our understanding that the county DPW intends to do significant improvements along this portion of the right-of-way. So that was something that really you couldn't guarantee anyway was going to remain. The vegetative screening proposed along 3 Mile Harbor Road now is mostly a single row of the single row or staggered double or triple row of deciduous and evergreen shrubs of up to 3 feet in height. That's this narrow band you can see along the northern property, western property line. This is configured 90 degrees. It includes spirea, mountain laurel, and azaleas. The board should discuss if this is appropriate and adequate, or if taller evergreen planting should be chosen. We recommend that at the very least, the area right by the side of the building here, in between this building facade, the western facade, and 3 Mile Harbor Road, have more substantial and taller evergreen screening, something along the lines of 10-foot evergreen, either arborvitae or eastern red cedar, which is what the applicants now propose. If you look to the right-hand side of the building, which is the northern side, that is all entirely arborvitae and eastern red cedar of up to 10 feet in height. We would recommend that they continue that around the side of the building to obscure the mass of the building from 3 Mile Harbor Road, at the very least, although you should discuss whether or not additional taller screening is required between the road and the site. The most recent plans indicate that there's a concrete pad and staircase in what you can see is the lower right-hand corner of the screen at the end of the building here. I will try to zoom in on that just so you can see. So right there, hopefully right in the middle of the screen. As you can see, there's no plantings proposed there, and that concrete pad is right up to the property line. The board should discuss with the applicants what the purpose and need is for that concrete pad, and whether or not there's additional screening that can go along that property line. Again, the property that abuts this is a residential lot. And again, that is the property line for which relief was required from the Zoning Board of Appeals, and where the Zoning Board required that the second-story deck that was proposed to go right to the edge of the building here basically be chopped back on the second story to meet the setbacks, so that, and that was in response to public comments, so that you didn't have the balcony, the deck of that second-story apartment looking right over that property line, where there's another a residential property. I will mention, though, there is proposed all along this property line and almost along the entirety of the perimeter of the site, except for 3 Mile Harbor Road, a 6-foot-tall stockade fence. So another change from the previous plan is, and I'll zoom out a little bit, the location of the dumpster enclosure, which originally was also proposed up in that area along 3 Mile Harbor Road where the truck loading space was to be. They've now proposed it. Hopefully you can see my cursor basically sort of in the center there, but along that rear property line. Again, that would abut residential property. It's not so much an issue of the visibility of the dumpster, because they're proposing a 6-foot stockade enclosure, and there's also a 6-foot stockade fence proposed along this property line, along with 10-foot tall arborvitae and eastern red cedar. That's these plants indicated here. It's more potential mice, rats, things of that sort, odors, being right up against that residential property line. That being said, as you look at this plan here, the landscaping plan, you can see that there's not too many areas where that could be relocated. The only real areas would be this center island, which is basically just a bad idea to start with. We wouldn't recommend that. Or the other corners of the property. Again, if you put it in this southeastern corner here, that would still be near a residential property. Perhaps this area right by the entrance is the best. If it is properly screened, it would be, you could make it minimally visible from 3 Mile Harbor Road. That's something, though, that you should discuss with the applicants, and we do concede that there's not a lot of space under this plan to relocate that structure. The applicants have submitted a comprehensive site lighting plan that meets the board's guidelines for exterior lighting. The only exception is that no information has been provided about the second-story apartments. We would assume that in looking at the building elevation plans, they'll probably be using high-hats recessed into the overhang of the roof. However, at the very least, the applicant should provide manufacturer specification sheets so that we can verify that it's code compliant. The only other comment we have, and we've made this in past reviews, is just that the title of the plans need to be consistent. This is something we remind you in many memorandum about, but the plans right now don't reference the name of the property owner and not the site plan application. That needs to be remedied. So basically, in conclusion, the application is still incomplete pending the resolution of those issues and submission of the required items. The board should discuss the remaining site plan elements with the applicants, and once resolved, the planning department will prepare the EAFs part 2 and 3, presumably for negative declaration, although you may want to have that discussion as well. Once all of that is achieved, the application can be deemed complete and ready to be scheduled for a public hearing.
Thanks very much.
Good question for Eric.
Yeah.
Eric, how do you access the apartments now in this plan?
I'll show you the building elevation plans. That's probably the best way to do it, but might take me a minute or two to dig them up. So stop screen sharing for a second. Or, I mean, if you guys can, maybe the applicant can address that, and I'll
Is it
pull
the
up the
outside
plans.
staircase? Is that the outside staircase, right?
Oh, well, I mean, there's various ways, but I believe
Somebody
that.
knows in this room.
Yeah,
Yeah.
indeed. All right.
Let me get the
Why
plans.
don't you bring up the overhead again?
Sure.
Not the overhead, the site.
The site plan or the area?
Elevations, I think, right?
Well, he has the elevation, which I thought he was having trouble finding.
Yeah, it's just gonna take me a minute. But I need to reduce I need to stop sharing and then find those plans. But it's gonna take about a minute.
Why doesn't the applicant then get started while you're finding that? So you can go share.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Richard Whalen from Whalen Filer, PLLC. I'm the attorney for the applicant, Sylvan Realty. And just so you know, that Sylvan Realty actually has a face behind it. We brought along with us tonight, Rick Van Denskoten, who's the principal of Sylvan Realty. And you can also then figure out where the name came from. So besides Rick, we also have Dan Peterson of Bowler Engineering, Frank Campione of Crate Architecture, which is now the architects on the project, and Dave Brown, who among other claims to fame, his father was Ken Brown, and he grew up in East Hampton, but he works in the city now. So first of all, I'd like to thank Eric Shands for his memo, and also he corresponded with us by email during our preparation of this resubmission. So I'd like to thank Eric for assisting us in that regard. As I said, there's a new architect on the project, and that's Crate Architecture. And they did redesign the building. I'm going to give you, in a few moments, I'll give you just one elevation so you can look at it, the south elevation of the building, give you an idea of what it will look like architecturally. Let me answer that first question before I move into there were a number of improvements, I believe, in the building with the new design, but originally to get to the apartments, you all went into the same lobby as the downstairs commercial space. You still go into a lobby, but it splits into a residential lobby. And that is the entryway to get upstairs to the two apartments. So they have their own.
So sort of that tower.
You want the floor plan or the elevation?
The floor plan, the residential lobby. Right. And I'm not sure if they have a separate entrance from the outside or.
Here's the first floor plan. You can see the entrance.
Frankie Campione with Create Architects. Pleasure to be in person for a change. The residential apartments, you're looking at the first floor. Underneath the tower, which somebody mentioned previously, is the entrance to the office area and the apartments on the second level. And when you get to the second level, there's a vestibule. You go to the right to the apartments, to the left to the office.
Thank you. It's a better, I would say, a better design for the access to the apartments than the original plan. So the basic changes on the plan, the essential design is not very different. As you can see, the building has been reshaped a little bit. The square footage of the building is almost identical. It's actually come down by a few square feet. We're also slightly lower in both building coverage and total lot coverage, not by large amounts, but those numbers actually did come down. We still have 48 parking spaces. The access will be at the southwest corner of the property, so maximizing the separation from the Oakview Highway intersection. The circulation within the parking lot, all two-way directional, 24-foot wide aisles. So almost all those aisles, almost everything is two-way directional. So it should provide for good circulation. As you heard, Suffolk County DPW has said we can't use their right of way for anything, whether it is landscaping or the original truck loading area. I think we can all agree now with the redesign, and this is something actually that I believe Randy in the original review was pushing for. The truck loading space is a lot better inside the site than it would have been on Freedom Harbor Road. And I think, planning department agrees, and I think we can all agree that was an improvement. We still have a few feet along the Freedom Harbor Road side of the parking lot for vegetation. I'll address that in a moment. And we have 4 feet on the east side adjoining the residences. I'm just thinking of other major changes in there. So let me deal with let's deal with the vegetation. I did want to say we did redesign not just the access to the apartments, but their own layout. They're now in a north-south orientation. They're going to be pretty nice apartments. They're about 700 square feet apiece. The bedrooms now are on the north side of the building, so they're all, the focus, at least of the bedrooms, is away from the parking area. Only one of them overlooks the parking lot anyway. They both have small terraces, so they're going to be, pretty nice apartments, I think. In terms of, so let me just turn then to some of the things that were raised by Eric in his memo. In terms of landscaping, the west side landscaping, I want to keep in mind that the parking area itself sits about 3 feet in elevation below Freedom Harbor Road. So there's already a dip that goes on there. The vegetation we're proposing along Freedom Harbor Road would be 3 feet as planted, will grow to 5 to 6 feet in height, and it should then completely screen cars, and even cars that are parked in the direction of Freedom Harbor Road. So, we think that should be adequate, but, you guys will opine on that. One thing I don't agree with Eric on is the height of the proposed vegetation alongside the building. Let me just show you. I don't know to what extent, I don't recall how much of the plans you guys received, but I just like to hand out the front elevation. It'll give you a sense of the building. So I'm going to just pass this around. If this is really part of our ARB application, we want to standard it. I guess you could do that. No,
I don't believe so.
I don't think he has. So, but I'm not going to go into the detail too much on it. What I wanted to make 2 points, maybe 3. One is you can see at the bottom of the page what the existing building looks like. I think you'll agree that the new building is going to look a lot better. That's number 1. Number 2, it is a traditional style of architecture. I think it'll fit very well on the site and in East Hampton generally. And the third point I want to make is we're in a neighborhood business zone. Maximum allowed height for commercial building neighborhood business zone for a gabled roof is 35 feet. Notice what our elevation is for the ridge line. We're not even at 29 feet. So this building is definitely not being overmassed. It's a very modest in terms of the height of the building. We do have 2 cupolas on there, but the roof ridge is in the 28 to 29 foot elevation range, which is actually lower than you could build a gabled roof house on a B residential lot in the town. So I think that's something the board should note. Therefore, we think it's a nice building design. I don't know that you want to necessarily screen it with a wall of evergreen vegetation. You guys will make that decision, but I would argue for, design a nice building and then accent the building with your landscaping plan. Landscaping on the easterly side of the property, which is adjoining the residences, we have 4 feet to play with there. We're proposing arborvitae that would be 6 to 7 feet as planted, and red cedar 8 to 10 feet as planted, and they're kind of intermixed. The fire marshal, of course, will await comments from the fire marshal. We already discussed the truck loading space. So one major point, one issue here is the dumpster. All right. We think the dumpster location is in its best location. And when I say that, I want you to keep in mind a couple things. First and most important, the dumpster should be reasonably accessible to the building. Employees and whoever, whatever the businesses are there are going to be going back and forth, taking trash out to the dumpster. And so ideally, you do not want them transiting on foot, presumably, the length of the parking lot. So to me, that excludes the southern part of the property, which is to the left there on the site plan. I don't really know where else you might put the dumpsters unless you wanted to put them in those two parking areas on the northwest corner, which is sort of off the left side of the building. But there you're close to 3 Marlborough Road. I mean, so do you want that? We do have 4 feet of vegetation behind the building. There will be a stockade fence. And I'm not minimizing the possible impact on residences, but I just don't know that there's a better place on the site for the dumpster. The other thing too is it was positioned so it sort of sequesters 4 parking spaces, which we assume at least a couple of them will be used for the apartments. I don't think there's going to be designated apartment parking there. I'm not sure we have the right to do that, but it does sort of create a little cubby hole where the apartment residents will presumably park their cars. So, we think that's the best place for the dumpster, and it's really hard to find a different place.
Is there a sidewalk on 3 Mile Harbor at that point?
I don't think so. On the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah, not this side.
Not at the present.
Now, who knows what the county will do if they ever get around to rebuilding 3 Marlborough Road. But
Thanks for that picture.
Yeah, so you can see it's on the western side, the opposite side of it.
Yeah. Lighting, as Eric indicated, there's the lighting plan sounds like it's basically satisfactory. There are some details that we didn't provide, and obviously we will do that. Eric made a good catch with respect to the area to the east of the building. We do have an egress there with a concrete walkway, and there's a stairway. We actually didn't, we thought about this actually afterwards, after we got Eric's memo. The stairs actually go to, as I recall, a sound room, like a balcony sound room from back in the day when this building was still been used until recently as a disco. So there's probably no need for that. So I do think that we'll probably should be able to remove the stairway and narrow that passage and provide better buffer to the residential neighbor.
So that staircase isn't like an emergency exit or something like that?
That's what I thought it was, but we talked about it, and no, it doesn't appear to be.
And also, if I understand the ZBA's determination correctly, you have to lock off some of the
terrace.
There.
Yeah.
So is the stairway attached to the terrace?
No, so we concluded the stairway probably has no purpose anymore. So once we remove that, and we'll confirm that, but once we remove it, we'll probably still need a walkway around because there probably is some emergency egress in the back of the building.
Would it be big enough to accommodate the dumpster?
No, not that large. No.
The only place I was wondering, I can't, looking at the building, but the dumpster could go closer to the loading dock just to get a little bit away from the property line, but
Well, you'll have to take a look. I mean, I don't know, do you guys have the site plan in front of you? You probably need the site plan there.
Yeah, I understand maybe not wanting to put it in that other back corner, but it doesn't get it that far away from the property line, but a little bit.
So it's maybe the main remaining design challenge here, and I guess you guys will discuss it. Again, we just want to emphasize that it should be reasonably close to the building because employees will be using it, and they should be able to get to and from it safely. Those are our considerations.
Anything else you want to do?
Yeah, so the only other thing to say is just on title of plans, I just want to point out, we've been consistently calling it Sylvan Realty, and apparently the Architectural Review Board told us to call it Sylvan Realty. I guess you're now calling it 443 Marlborough Road. We should decide on what it should be,
We just need a name choice.
I mean, I think we've always called it Sylvan Realty.
Well, this started as 44 with us.
Yeah, I think the site plan.
And it was, I think, it changed hands since this all started.
I know, so.
Yeah. It did.
But I mean,
One name, Rich.
in your cover letter, you can decide, put in your cover letter, let me know what you
One of the perks of being the applicant is you get to call it whatever you want.
Well, we'll call it Sylvan then.
So can you, just before you go, you said there's a possible area in the north west corner for the dumpster?
Well,
Where would that be?
Well, you could supplant those 2 parking spaces and replace them with 2 parking spaces here. But you are close to 3 Marlborough Road at that point.
So with the other one on the far left, I'm looking at the.
Yeah, I mean, this at least has the benefit of you're closer to the building. So it's a little less desirable from my point of view, because this is sort of, the face of the property, on the road.
But there's gonna be screening, 3 feet.
Yeah, I mean, we would, obviously, there'll be
That's
a,
6 feet.
there'll be a fence around it, and then there'll be some landscaping.
Just, considering that now, and going to the elevation drawing, and this is maybe something you'd work out with the ARB, but just looking at that corner, which would be over here, instead of even doing a stockade fence, maybe you could continue that style of the facade, that siding out, and have basically the wall come out and enclose the dumpster in that corner of the property, because it would be right up against the building.
Right.
So, just a thought.
All right, let's.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
Thank you.
actually, that's probably the better, thinking about that loading dock, it's not that far away from it. I think that's probably one of the major issues. I mean, I the redesign of the loading truck area is much improved. Fire marshal will do his thing. So then in terms of landscaping, I mean, I agree. I don't really like a wall of arborvitae. That seems to be happening a lot around town, and I'm not liking it. Just putting up these edges of arborvitae around their properties. Oh, no.
Yes.
My experience is that it's deer food. So
Lately, I've just been noticing people just surrounding their properties with arborvitae, and I don't think it's a great look. But maybe just a few tall things mixed in with the short stuff would be nice. And make it gardeny, just to obscure the building. But yeah, this building is definitely more traditional than the original application that we got, which was quite modern. Will probably fit in a little bit better. That's all I would say about the landscaping, and if you can get rid of that back piece and add more landscaping in the back to buffer the neighbors, that would be good. And really, I think it is about the dumpster, and I didn't think of that front corner when I was looking at the map, because I was thinking of all that parking, but I guess you could turn that section where the dumpster is into those 2 parking spots. So I think that would be the best spot for the dumpster. I do.
On Camille Harbor side.
Yeah.
I agree with you on that. Having the dumpster on the boundary of the residential properties just asking for trouble for the folks who live there. And also, they've been bringing I presume they're going to be bringing a garbage truck into the property.
That was my thing, more noise. I wasn't even thinking about just the lights and everything else, but it's very noisy.
They're noisy, and they do have an aroma, so it can. I think that it could be, and again, architecture, looks like the architect has been working overtime to make this look better. And by the way, Ms. Whalen, you should, Rick, like when this is in the submission, you'll submit this to you, right?
Yeah, we'll make a formal, I guess we have a full set, I only gave you.
I know, I understand, and ordinarily we wouldn't want to accept things, but for this purpose, for our conversation, we can do that. But the thing is this, I'm more concerned with the neighbors than anything else here, and imposing the dumpster on the neighbor, on residential. I think with the architects, they've done a pretty good job so far. Want to be able to come up with something that allows it to be up against Primo Harbor rather than the neighbor's boundary.
We can get on a title of lighting, I think lighting and title will get worked out. It will all be worked out.
So I agree with moving the dumpster to the new location. I think it's a very good idea that they're proposed, and I support that. I just want to point out, currently, I visited the site before the meeting. The current dumpster is where the proposed dumpster is right now. And there's a 6-foot stockade fence there, but it's on this kind of ridge. So the top of the fence is like 15 feet above you. So it's like you said, the parking lot is sunken. Yeah, it is really down low there. Nevertheless, I like the new location. Are we voting on that particular issue?
Well, we're going to try to come to a consensus.
Yeah, I support what's been said about relocating the dumpster. I think, it is challenging, no question about it, but I do think the Three Mile Harbor side, close to the building, is the way to go.
Well, we only have a few items that, have been presented to us for the conversation. If you want to ask, please, that's what we get.
Well, I just would like to respond to some of the public comments that have been made, that we've received. I think, yeah, we've gotten public comments against the proposal. Because the claim is that we're turning East Hampton, which is more of a rural area, into a suburbanized strip mall type of up-island type of location, which, concerns me. I certainly don't want that, and I would fight that tooth and nail. However, I think it's important also to make a distinction between dilapidated, shabby buildings that need to be renovated and rural bucolic type of look. So I think we have to walk that fine line. And I think
Randy.
what is Randy?
No, Randy, it wasn't Randy who said it. It was somebody.
Oh, Randy's dog. So Randy agrees with me and Randy's dog agrees with me. So anyway, that's the only comment I wanted to make. I think that this project doesn't go too far to urbanize and create a strip mall type of look in East Hampton, where we're totally against that kind of thing.
When it was a disco for its many years, it wasn't quite a, bucolic rural look.
And also the people that we count on to renovate and renew, which is important also. They don't do it from a charitable standpoint. They need to create something that is viable and profitable. So we want to encourage that as well. So like I said, we will have to walk that fine line. And I just want to, I think this, plus if a small food market goes into this location, I think that's also a needed type of establishment for the area. So anyway, those are my comments.
If you look at the history of this application, it started out pretty big and grandiose.
Yeah.
And the board was pretty unanimous in its feeling that was a little too much.
A lot underground.
A lot too much. Had underground parking, yes. And as we've gone on through the planning process, it's become more modest, if you will, while retaining the housing, which is important. We ordinarily we'll take comments from the public. It's not a public hearing, but we do welcome comments from the public at the podium. And Randy, but first we hear from all the members of the board. Randy, you have something?
Yeah, so I agree with everybody about relocating the dumpster to 3 Mile Harbor because when I first got on the board, I had to deal with a dumpster situation in on Montauk Highway that, as Eric said, there were a lot of problems with rats and odor, and it was just a mess. And I wouldn't want to wish that on the neighbors. So that I agree with. I'm not really happy with the way this building looks. As you know, I didn't want us to let them have fewer parking spaces than the code requires. I wanted them to make the building smaller so they would have to meet the parking code. And I think that would have helped make it more East Hampton. I think I don't know what the ARB, how far they've gone so far, but I don't really like the tower and the spire and the aluminum and glass. I mean, my suggestion to the architects would be take a look at Town Hall, what's been done with those historic East Hampton buildings. Take a look at the Domini workshop on North Main Street, not far from this, that the village just built, and try to make this look more like the historic East Hampton buildings look. To me, this still looks like it doesn't look like East Hampton to me at all. It looks like, Garden City strip mall. So that's my 2 cents.
We'll be receiving a letter from the Village of Garden City. Answer the law for response.
Not all of Garden City, just parts of.
Garden City is big and diverse. The member of the public does wish to speak. That's fine. But just remember the commentary that is anticipated relates to things that we don't know. Conditions on the ground. Go right ahead and I'm going to set my little clock here and we can go.
Very quickly, David Buddha from the Springs, 6 Montgomery Avenue. I just would like to suggest that, in my opinion, the proposed screening, of the 40 some odd parking lot is painfully insufficient. And the only reason that is because the applicant tried to do something that they should have known from the beginning was impossible, and that was to use the county right of way as their means of providing screening. So it's really a self-created hardship, and that you would not, I would hope, not relax that setback requirement to such a great degree if someone were to come in from the beginning and say how much screening, how much setback do we need in order to provide ample and sufficient screening for a parking lot, which, whether it's whatever the elevation is, will be extremely visible from the roadway. The second point I'd like to make is that I agree that the dumpster is better in a different location, because as it is, those 4 parking spots, which were described as being in a cubby hole, would have been really impossible to use for anyone. But more importantly, I think the town, the board needs to take a closer look at the functionality and feasibility of the loading area and the turnaround required for these massive food delivery trucks that are now in vogue, whether it be from Cisco or some other food purveyor. Ask yourself on this design, where and how are they going to turn around? And where and how is the second food truck going to place itself as it is on the same property at the same time? Obviously, merchants, if we are talking about a potential food use, can't control when their vendors bring their food, and you have to provide for sufficient room for maneuverability of what unfortunately are larger and larger trucks these days. And lastly, the 2 cupolas, I'm not sure if a height variance would be triggered or required. I don't know for sure, but it looks like unless they're planning to have an application for a cell phone tower, I'm not sure what the spire is on top of the cupolas. I agree with Randy that this is not the look that I think East Hampton wants. It's more of a urban or even village look than a rural area of East Hampton. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, let's make sure that we're all on the same page. So the board, we're all in agreement, I presume, that the revisions to the landscaping plan are required. That the specification sheet for the we can hold off on that. Yeah, okay, go right ahead.
Can we get this finish going around, maybe?
Yeah, no, that's fine, go right ahead. Here you are. No, it's up to us.
Yeah, no, go ahead. My question, I'd love to hear from the applicant. We don't like the proposed vegetation, is that the idea?
Just to add, well, they're gonna add in the back, right? Because they're gonna get rid of the staircase, the concrete staircase, and then maybe just a few added tall things on the west side.
But the east side, okay. But we're okay with the 3 foot,
Mhm.
okay,
On 3 Mile Hall.
yes, right, then sure.
Sharon, do you like cedar? I mean, cedar is native, and I think
Yeah, I don't mind some evergreen mixed in, I just don't like that wall of evergreen.
I agree with you about the arborvitae.
Yeah,
And maybe the plants along 3 Mile Harbor Road could start out higher than 3 feet. But
yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think Mr. Buda brought up a good point, and something I wanted to talk about, which is the circulation for the truck. I think we all had an issue with the idea of sort of pulling in off 3 Mile Harbor. I think this is a much better place, and I think the two-way traffic in the parking lot probably allows you to just pull around and back in smoothly, but that is important. You know, it would be a disaster if that didn't work. Otherwise, I like it, but I would like to see an engineer report and turning radiuses. I think the fact that you have two-way traffic is incredibly helpful there. Same thing for the dump truck, garbage truck, not having to back up. And I agree with the other board members, but I think 3 Mile Harbor makes more sense, although I'm a little bit unsure of it. I guess public comments will matter a lot here, but Eric's suggestion of sort of continuing the building design, I think in concert with, raising those plantings up, because the west side is not the most beautiful. It's the south side, it seems like, is the focus. So if on the west side of the building, is facing 3 Mile Harbor, maybe extended into this dumpster, you brought those plantings up a little bit. And I don't know that we need taller plantings, something that goes beyond 5 or 6 feet in the parking area. I would want to make sure if you stick with azaleas, are the evergreen type, because they're both kinds. Mountain laurels are evergreen technically, but not incredibly full. I'm not an expert with landscaping, an expert with the planning department, but I do want to make sure that what's there, and I agree with other board members that a wall of arborvitae is not native or probably what we're looking for, but something that's going to screen it, even if it is, situated up and you have that to your advantage. And then anything you can do with that staircase, look, this exists. We have to work with it. We would not be doing this plan if it was undeveloped already. I agree with Randy. We would require the parking that's required. There's a building there. We're starting with something that exists. However, I think in that context, with that in mind, we have to make sure that we protect the neighbors. And this will go for public hearing. They're aware of it. They're already going to do so anything we can do down there on that property line. And I've been there too, and I noticed what Michael was saying about the height difference. I think that's a great thing. Take advantage of that to really protect the neighbors so that they're not, looking down on you and you're not looking down on them.
Anybody else have any comments?
I just want to make one comment, just to be sure that I'm clear about something. You said raise this issue. The building remains, correct? The existing building is
Yes,
still
yes.
around,
Yep.
right?
Yep. It'll look very different, but the basic structure will be there. Yeah, that's going to be the main structure of the building.
All right, I think I like that. I think that's important. We not should rip it down and start all over again.
Not being torn down.
Okay.
And then the aesthetics, just to not gloss over that, well, I think it's an area issue. I don't want to take a huge, I suspect that maybe the pyramid laws come into play with the overall height. I'm not sure if that.
No, we comply with pyramid law.
Okay.
We wouldn't have gotten this far without that.
No, I know, but I'm wondering if that's why it's, 29 feet instead of 35. But it doesn't matter.
Yeah, right.
I think that, I don't want to make you do it twice, but the overall aesthetic, the ARB will address it.
We have to stay in our lane on a lot of that.
I think Mr. Buda brought up a good point about the spire too, and, make sure that complies.
Is there a full basement underneath this?
Yes.
And do we have any floor plan on that? Like what's going on down there?
Can only be storage. Mechanical space or passageway. Otherwise we count towards gross floor area.
There you go.
We don't expand the basement other than the circulation.
Say that again.
We do not expand the basement other than for the circulation. So that we're not increasing the basement footprint to match the new footprint of the building. So you can see the existing basement in gray, and then we just accommodate the elevator and the stair.
So it's existing.
It's the existing basement plus the vertical circulation.
Do you need, question about the elevator. Is that what's in the tower is an elevator?
Correct. That gives us the ADA compliance to the second level.
So you need that for the apartments? Because we don't always get elevators in second floor apartments in the applications.
We felt it was necessary for the apartment as well, for the 2 apartments as well as for the office. And so it's an ADA compliant. I'm looking over there, but I don't know where the screen is. I'm looking at it. But we do give you an ADA compliant elevator for the apartment and office use.
So the mechanical are in the cupola?
In the cupola. And if the spire is not desired, the spire is decorative, that could be removed, and the staircase on the east side will be removed.
Anyone else have any comments that you want to pass along? So in terms of the screening, do we have a consensus on the landscape? Do we have a consensus on that?
I mean, I didn't, my only suggestion was a few taller things just to mix it up instead of having just a hedge looking type vegetation, but.
Anyone else on that?
Yeah, I agree with you. You don't want a wall.
Yeah.
No, we don't want
Whether that means higher
I
or
mean, I
not,
don't think you need a lot of 10-foot
Yeah.
trees, but
just something that's more thoughtful.
yeah.
And the spec sheets for the second floor lighting.
Yeah.
And changing the name, that's also on you.
Well, and one part of the landscaping plan, I think that Eric brought up a good point in front of the building to make it taller, and was a little bit less strong about the parking area. I think particularly at the other dumpster, if you're increasing the mass, then all the more reason to screen it taller.
Well, within the parking area also.
Have we looked at the septic and the drainage on this? I don't see
Yes, we know.
I don't see anything in the current set of plans, but
Yes.
No, it's in the file, it's in the file.
Yeah, we definitely, I know we spent time on this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and the new plans, I presume, don't change with septic calculations. We're all the same, right?
Our site civil engineer says no.
Yeah,
Doesn't
they're
really
actually
change the plan.
reducing the overall amount of retail space slightly. So actually, they're slightly reducing the generated sanitary flow from the last time that you saw the plan.
So we're getting new?
I'm sorry?
Are we getting something new on that?
What do you mean?
Yeah, well, we have to submit new sanitary and drainage plans. That's the last thing to be done, because obviously we wanted to make sure that you're okay with the general layout, but we do have to submit.
All right, so then we'll come back again.
are we getting a new low nitrogen system?
Yeah.
Is that part? Yeah.
Of course, yep.
He has to.
So that leaves us with the dumpster. Do we have a consensus on the board on the dumpster putting it towards 3 Mile Harbor?
I think we do.
I think we do. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a slight preference to that. I mean, in favor of it.
I do.
Well, I think we heard Eric's suggestion about helping to, extend the wall, and I think we're okay with it. I think we're okay with that. We can make a slight change to the design, but we can accommodate that. I would like Dan Peterson and Bowler to speak. Circulation was something was definitely considered, and particularly with regard to the truck loading space. So I'd just like Dan to comment.
All right, thank you. Dan Pedersen with Bowler. So we did review the truck circulation. We ran a box truck through the site. It circulates clockwise around the interior parking island and then backs into that loading space. All the curb radii were designed to accommodate that truck. Based on the size of this facility, we don't anticipate giant, WB67 tractor trailers making deliveries here. So we're comfortable with the design of the loading space and the on-site circulation.
What size box truck was it that you?
We did a 30-foot, which is kind of like a standard box truck, SU30, single unit.
And it can make a turn?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. All the radii, all the maneuvers are comfortably made with the box truck.
I mean, to a certain degree, the truck that arrives is perhaps out of your control, depending on these purveyors. So, I mean, the concern about the ultra long trucks isn't misplaced. It's just, I mean, I guess when you're operating the business, and you're gonna have to talk to the purveyors and make sure that they know that if they bring in a big truck, they're not gonna have an easy time.
Well, is there a known point at which it doesn't work? I mean,
We can run and see what the largest size truck is. Probably a 40 would probably work on this site. A tractor trailer, I don't foresee us getting a tractor trailer circulating through the site. If a tractor trailer is going to use the site, he's probably just going to pull up, deliver, and
And that's precisely the point. What you don't want is you don't want, on a regular basis, large tractor trailers stopping, on 3 Mile Harbor right there, which is pretty far south on 3 Mile Harbor and pretty close to, there's a lot of commercial activity going on there, and it'll jam up traffic and create problems, throughout that part of town. So you can see it's that's something we need to worry about. You don't want that to take place. You don't want it to be a magnet for every Tuesday and Thursday. We know there's a big truck pulling in and it's going to jam up traffic.
I think it's also worth looking at just because the configuration, I know you did a lot with the parking configuration to make sure you have two-way traffic all around.
Mhm.
Great idea. But if there could be any shifting of that island in order to accommodate a bigger truck, you do want to maximize it, because as Sam said, you don't control who will show up and, the constraints, but.
Are you assuming that truck would deliver at night or while people are there in the parking using the facility in the day? How did you handle that?
Well, when we ran the truck didn't go over any of the parking stalls. It stayed entirely within all the aisles.
Okay.
All right, let's move on to the next.
Yeah, if we did assume, after hours or, we could probably fit a significantly larger truck through the parking lot.
Yeah, a lot of this is unpredictable now, because once you're in operation, then you see how things shake out again in the veins.
Well, that's one of the things I was getting at too, because the island area near the building is going to be the constraint. So perhaps, it seems like there's curbing on that section to the north, right?
Yes.
The middle. Well, perhaps if you lessen that, so only when there was a car there was there actually an impediment.
Mhm.
I'm not sure. I think we should look at those numbers closely to make sure you're maximizing the size truck that can fit in.
Thanks very
All
much.
right, thank you.
Yes, we're gonna move on to the next.
I'll just wrap up here.
You're not here for that, are you? Okay.
Well, let me make a comment on that. I mean, we don't know who the users are going to be. I've talked, there's all kinds of different possibilities. If you're thinking about a grocery store, that's probably, and we do not know that a grocery store would be the user. The more advanced ones these days, think of Cinderella's. They don't have tractor trailers come. Cinderella's all box trucks. So any modern retailer in a site like this, they're not bringing a tractor trailer. That'd be ridiculous. So that's my only comment on that. The only thing I want to comment in terms of the architecture, I disagree with Randy, I disagree with David. It's a traditional building. It's gabled roof. It's cedar shingled. It probably has more windows than it would if it was built in the 17 or the 1800s. All right, that's the way of the world. More windows because modern buildings, they want more natural light. More natural light means less energy spent on lighting inside the building. So, there's probably more windows. That's the only thing I can think of when people say they think it looks suburban. There's a few more windows than you would have in a traditional, 1750 style residence. But I personally think it's very compatible with East Hampton. The finial on the tower, these things are mostly our ARB discussions anyway.
Sure.
The finial on the tower would be allowed if it's considered to be a flagpole. That's the only exception for the height. Otherwise, everything is within the height limits, including the cupolas. If it's decided either by you or by the ARB that you don't like that finial or spire, then we'll remove it, as Frank said. So, okay.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Moving on to the next, Gardner's Marina. I see the folks from Gardner's Marina. Okay. And Randy, that one's yours, and Aaron, that one's yours. So, go right ahead.
Okay, so since the time of the last review, the applicants have submitted a detailed project narrative which addresses the questions that we raised, that being the planning department, in the initial evaluation. The submitted narrative indicates that the clubhouse is intended for use by the Marina customers and staff, and that food and beverage service are not proposed, and the applicants do not intend to obtain a liquor license. The board should read this document and determine if it is sufficient. With regard to construction protocol, the applicants have submitted a detailed protocol for the project. Although additional information may be required, and most likely will be, in association with the boat basement enlargement, the planning department finds the upland aspects of the project to be adequately addressed. The board should determine if it agrees. As requested by the board at the time of the initial review, the applicants have provided test hole data indicating that groundwater was found 3.8 feet below grade, which was measured at 8.75 feet above median sea level. As a reminder to the board, the applicants intend to utilize the existing low nitrogen sanitary system installed in June of last year. The clubhouse building is proposed to have a first floor elevation of 14.5 feet above sea level, placing it roughly 10 feet above groundwater and roughly 5 feet above existing grade. The site plan contains notations indicating that the storage building will be designed to meet the board's groundwater protection policy. The applicants have submitted a site lighting plan as well as manufacturer's spec sheets. The department finds this generally acceptable. However, foot candle measurements throughout the site should be provided, and the wall-mounted fixtures for the storage building are very much in excess of the board's guidelines with regard to lumen levels. An alternative fixture should be chosen. The applicants have submitted a comprehensive site landscaping plan. This plan provides a key. The previous plan did not. A key that identifies all the plant species. The planning department finds this acceptable. The board should determine if it agrees. The application has been referred to the Office of Fire Prevention. The fire marshal has requested additional information pertaining to handicapped accessibility to the clubhouse building and the boat slips, which the applicants will need to address. The applicants have submitted an application to the Zoning Board of Appeals for the required natural resources special permit. The planning department will work with the applicants to formulate a complete application and eventually have this matter before the ZBA. So in conclusion, provided the board agrees, the application is otherwise complete with the exceptions of demonstrating ADA compliance, some minor changes to the lighting plan, and more important to assessing the potential adverse impacts of the project, the ultimate granting of the NRSP by the Zoning Board of Appeals. The planning board as lead agency for the proposed project should render a secret determination and adopt an EAF parts 2 and 3 prior to the matter being scheduled for a public hearing before the zoning board. At this point, the applicant should provide any additional information to make the NRSP application complete. Once that application has been deemed complete, the planning department will bring this application back before the planning board for discussion of those elements submitted and a secret determination. It's anticipated that should a negative declaration be recommended, that it would be conditional upon that Zoning Board of Appeals approval. Once the Zoning Board of Appeals has rendered a decision on the natural resources special permit and the remaining site plan elements have been addressed, then the site plan application would be complete and ready to be scheduled for a public hearing. However, we stress at this time that the board should discuss the remaining essentially site plan elements, landscaping and lighting. So the applicants need to provide a complete application for review of what is the most important aspect of this project, which is the boat basin enlargement and any potential impacts it may have on the waters of 3 Mile Harbor and the surrounding wetlands.
Thank you very much for this thorough report on this. Appreciate it. Applicant, wish to be heard.
I'm Mark Mendelman, Harbor Lands LLC, Gardeners Marina. Thank you, Eric, for all your work, and thank you to the planning board for hearing us tonight. I expect to turn around revisions to the lighting plan. No problem in reducing the size of the lighting elements for the proposed storage building. And the ADA accessibility requirements or additional information requested from the fire marshal, we can turn those around quickly as well. The only note I made in the groundwater protection elements of the memo was that the clubhouse building first floor elevation would be 5 feet above grade. If you look at the site plan, there are existing contours on the site plan that show that the existing grade around the clubhouse is 12 feet. So the proposed clubhouse will be 2.5 feet above the existing grade versus 5 feet. Other than that, I have no additional comments, but I'm happy to address any questions the board might have. Thank you.
Randy, I believe, yes, this is yours.
I understand that this is going to the ZBA for natural resources, but I don't feel like we have enough information to make a secret declaration. And I'll tell you some of the things that I think it would be helpful for us to have. Eric will correct me if I'm wrong, but I didn't see a clearing calculation on the plan. I didn't see a coverage calculation, and it's interesting, but the coverage calculation, I don't know exactly how much of the lot area would be converted from lot area to marina, in which case the lot size is going to go down. So I think we need to see how the coverage and total coverage works. Now, I guess existing conditions, and then once the lot area is modified by the proposed marina expansion. I don't believe we have parking delineated, and usually we do that. It just says dirt, gravel, parking area, and the number of spaces. But I think we need to see the parking delineated and the aisles and take a look at the circulation. As far as the test hole, I'm not exactly sure where the test hole was done, but it's right there. Okay. So given the fact that is this building supposed to have a basement in it?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and also in HPOD, the roof drainage is supposed to go into leaders and gutters into dry wells. I don't know that we have any information about parking dry wells, but it would be very useful for us to see a section drawing at certain points of top of the groundwater table and the bottom of the basement, and also the bottom of the dry wells in the parking area, and taking the roof drainage. I assume that the low nitrogen system has the required 4 feet of separation between the leaching field and the top of the groundwater table. And the last thing I would say is that in the past, I had to work on a project on Georgica Pond where we did a lot of soil test holes to see how the level of the pond affected the level of the top of the groundwater table on property adjacent. And it was very pronounced. I mean, it would raise, I don't know if it was exactly the same as the amount of elevation in the water was in the groundwater, but I think we need to have some idea of what people think a reasonable fluctuation in the groundwater table with a high tide and or a storm tide, what it might be, because in a way you really want to plan for that, especially if the sea level is rising. So those are my thoughts.
Anyone else?
I think Randy's generally, right, that we need a lot more information in terms of, environmental impacts of this project are important. I think the natural resources special permit through the zoning board. I think Randy's right. We're not ready to make a declaration. I don't think Eric was implying we are. I think once you give that information to the ZBA, we're going to want to see it too. They have more expertise in that area, but 100% agree with Randy. We have to make sure that's all kosher. In terms of clearing and coverage, of course, we need to see that as well. I don't know how I feel about parking, so I don't think you're adding anything, and I'm not sure. Randy, are you saying we should have permanent striping there, or?
I was wondering that.
Because usually we go the opposite direction, that kind of thing.
I mean, generally we show the parking. I don't know, does this building increase parking demand? I don't know. I guess not. But
From what I understand, it's kind of like it's not going to create its own traffic. It's for the, if I understand the applicants correctly, it's basically a facility for folks who, finish their time out on the water and just want to relax a little before they get in their car and remain on land. And I get the sense that that's what this is about. They're certainly not using it for parties or any significant parties. Let's put it that way.
Eric, do you have anything about that?
About illustrating the parking? Yeah, the parking is tied to the number of boat slips, which is not proposed to increase. However, Randy's absolutely right. As you see on the site plan in front of you right now, they've illustrated the location or, proposed location of some delineated handicapped accessible parking spaces. We do very often, usually more times than not, require on site plans that the applicants just illustrate the parking on site. That being said, the number of spaces required is not changing. But again, to reiterate, as part of the information that's going to be requested by the ZBA, which again, all of that will be brought back to this board before anything is decided with secret or completeness. One of the aspects of this project is that they're going to be using, or at least they're proposing right now, that may change down the road, but to use dredge material in that parking area. We need a lot of details on what the volume is going to be of that, the change in elevation that may affect this parking layout. So I'd just like to clarify, and because I think that perhaps I worded it a little poorly in the memorandum, but we're not saying that this application is by any means complete at this point. I just feel that the applicants, this board should work right now just on some of the upland issues, the landscaping, the lighting, see how you feel about that. But the next step really in moving this application forward is for the applicants to submit a complete application to the Zoning Board of Appeals for every aspect of the boat basin enlargement. And then, once we have those details and we have more information about the potential adverse impacts of the project, then this will come back in front of this board. And perhaps during the course of reviewing that information, there may be further changes to this plan. So, we were only indicating that, some of the elements here that the board had discussed the last time, many of them, those being on the upland portions, have been addressed. But yeah, so I'm getting a little bit away from your question about the parking. But at this point, I'm not really sure what that parking area is going to look like because we don't really have a lot of information about the exact change to the bulkhead, the configuration of the boat basin, what the construct of that parking area is going to be, if they are going to be putting dredged material there. So yes, Randy's, general point is correct. And that is something that the board probably should request, is that the parking be delineated. Again, this is proposed to be, as it is now, in the end, a gravel parking lot with undelineated spaces. And again, they're not increasing the parking requirement, but certainly eventually that would be something that would be, required if you feel so, and I think it warrants it to have that illustrated on the site plan.
But procedurally, they could go to the zoning board, figure out all that stuff, come back to us. We can ask a few more things before they do the public hearing at the zoning board.
No, well, that's not really. And that's not kind of what I was getting at. What I meant is the difference between having a complete I want to make the distinction of the difference between having a complete application in front of the zoning board and then going in front of the zoning board for a public hearing. Keep in mind, the zoning board doesn't have work sessions. They have a one-shot deal public hearing. What I'm getting at in the memorandum is that a complete application should be submitted to the ZBA in terms of all of the items that are required to assess the impacts of the project. So that's more them submitting, all of the items that will be required, all of the plans that, provide the information that's needed to assess the environmental impact. So I would like to see them work with the zoning board. Right now, Brian Frank, the chief environmental analyst in my department, has that aspect of the project. I've been working with him and discussing it so that we can coordinate between the two boards. I'd like to see the applicant submit all of that information to the ZBA, have a complete application. And then, of course, this board as lead agency, we'd be bringing an assessment of that information back to you for a more in-depth discussion of what is the principal aspect of this project, which is the boat basin enlargement, the dredging, the final bathymetry, the final depth proposed. But at this point, the applicants have addressed, again, I'll refer to it kind of as the upland issues. They've addressed a number of those, but as Member Parsons pointed out, there is some additional information that you may want to highlight at this time. But I suspect that a lot of that information will be coming back to you, with that additional information that will be required, by the zoning board directly to review the NRSP application.
See, one of the things I'm thinking is that if we don't have parking and drainage in the parking lot, we don't know what that is. And it looks to me like the basin expansion could eliminate parking, and it could also require the replacement of drainage systems.
It's not going to eliminate parking. I think it moves the parking back.
No.
Well, there's wetlands there, Sam.
I think there's a large grassy area.
It's the grassy area they're moving into.
Let's hear from the applicant.
Well, we're guessing, right?
No, we're not.
No, so
No, we've heard this.
the basin expansion is into the already disturbed area of lawn and picnic tables. It doesn't extend past that, and the existing gravel parking area remains the same.
Okay.
I have a question about the parking. Eric, I know I asked you this and you said that it wouldn't create an additional use, but on the Marina's website, it's heavily advertised that there are fishing boats, fishing charters available to the public, and people can charter boats. So it would not be the Marina members who have boats in the slips, but it will be members of the public that can go on to the Marina and charter a boat. And there are special programs that you're offering, tie-ins to a nearby restaurant, that kind of thing. So it seems to me that would create a need for additional parking, because you don't know how many people are going to accept this kind of promotion and charter boats. So how does that play into the needs of the parking? I'm asking that, Eric.
Sure. Historically, we've never treated charter boats or like sailing classes, things of that sort, as increasing the parking requirement. It's always been tied to the number of boat slips individually. So, but you're right, in the real world, that does affect the amount of people that will be coming to the site, the nature of, you know, what is that boat individually being used for? I think in the past, that's kind of been, you know, addressed by virtue of the fact that, you know, most marinas don't have one or two slips, and they all go to be charter boats or something of that sort. So, you know, by virtue of the fact that you have a lot of slips, you know, the majority of them will be individual owners. There might be a couple of charter boats in there, but under the town code, that's not a separate use. That being said, I'm not sure of the type of events or, you know, operations that you know, specifically that you might be speaking of. There might be something that might require an interpretation from the building inspector, but just, I know in the past, you know, sailing lessons, and more importantly, more commonly, charter boats, you know, party boats, fishing boats, we haven't treated that as any kind of separate use from a marina, a recreational marina. And the parking requirement in the code does not say one way or the other. It's for the, you know, it's based on the number of boat slips.
But Eric, we don't know that, and this will come up with we have another application on 3 Mile Harbor that is also advertising luxury charters. And we don't know that the charter boat is a boat in the marina. It could be a boat that's moored or docked somewhere completely different and just comes and picks up charter people.
Sounds like you may have identified yet another area that might require the town board to take a closer look.
Yeah, again, I can only say that as far as, you know, traditional charter boats go, that is not, first of all, it's not addressed in the code, either in the parking requirement or the definition of a recreational marina. Although actually it's permitted in the definition. But a deviation from that might be significant to cause this board concern about the need for parking or the operation. As the chairman says, you may wish to seek a determination from the building inspector.
Well, the charter question, as Lou said, it affects parking. It also affects if people who are going on charters can use the new building. It affects affects wastewater, and so I think it's relevant. I don't.
But it may not be within our group. That's the only that taking that into consideration. We're here to deal with.
Excellent question.
Go, please.
Is there charter fishing now at the site?
Not necessarily fishing, but it's mostly pleasure cruises. Yes, there are charters, and there are certainly owners of boats that bring their own guests in and take them out on their own vessels. But as the chairman said, and Eric said, that's the law now, the regulations now, that that's how marinas are allowed to operate, with the parking established by the number of slips and the number of employees. And that's what we're doing.
Thank you.
The application is heard within that boundary. So, okay, do we need, have we all had a chance to consider the narrative? And find it acceptable? Is the information as well pertaining to groundwater elevation protection, do you think it's adequate, or?
Well, in terms of the elevation of the building, yeah,
Yes, and that's what we're looking at here specifically, right?
yes.
Yeah.
Well, I don't agree. I think we need to know more about dry wells and
We will.
existing and proposed dry wells.
It'll be coming back.
So we're gonna do the secret determination, but we're gonna pass it to the zoning board without having a complete site plan.
No.
Well, Eric, they illustrate the dry wells, right?
I'm sorry?
The dry wells, are there any question about the dry wells from the?
They're proposing 2 dry wells. They're shown on the plan for the roof, to collect the roof runoff. There's no drainage proposed in the gravel parking area. That may be something that's determined to be needed to control runoff, depending upon what the final configuration, size, and substrate of that area will be. I think that's something that we can work with the applicants when we're, reviewing their NRSP submission to determine if additional information is needed. But my understanding was that the board's question from the last review was about the dry wells around the clubhouse building. Right. And they proposed 2 of them. They show them on the site plan. I can show you their location. They are these circles with these black dots in the middle on either end of the building. See dry well 1 up here, dry well 2. We do not have a cross section of them yet, showing their elevation. However, they're not leaching structures like with the sanitary system, so they're not required to have a minimum vertical separation. That being said, if that's additional information that this board wants, you should say that now. But that's something that we're going to be asking for and bringing back to this board, asking for in conjunction with the ZBA application. But then obviously, and I need to reiterate this point, anything, this board is the lead agency under SECRA. Anything that's going to be required as part of the review for the natural resources special permit and variance, there's a variance for the storage building, that is going to be brought back to this board, because you can't make a determination of significance under SECRA without all of that information. So this, maybe the question is the one you answer now, but I was pointing it more at the board's comments at the last review.
Well, so it seems like by letting it go to the ZBA, if we're not satisfied, once that information comes to us, we ask for more before they hear it.
Yeah.
And we don't make a decision until, secret decision until we.
Yeah, you're the lead agency.
I think Randy's bringing up a good point, but I don't think we're missing our.
No, we're not. That was the whole point of us being the lead agency, as opposed to the ZBA being the lead agency, because there was a very good argument that since they have to get an NRSP, why shouldn't the ZBA be the lead agency? But at the same time, there were significant planning issues, and we're going to have those thoroughly vetted before this board, and in accordance with our obligations as the lead agency and as the planning board. So Randy, you'll get another bite at that apple. So we all,
Randy, you still think there's more that we need now before the ZBA?
well, if you want to give the applicant guidance as to the way you think that it should go, I mean, you've pretty good, pretty well said what you're thinking, but if there's anything else, go right ahead. Randy?
What's that?
I was saying, if there's anything else that you want to give as guidance to the applicant, bearing in mind the applicant's going to be coming back.
I think they should delineate the parking and show the drainage in the parking lots. And I don't see how we can make a determination without knowing that. And I don't, is the septic system shown on our drawing yet?
Yeah, it is. It's tough to see on this one. There are little yellow circles here indicating the covers. A previous plan had the easier to read layout of that system, showing the low nitrogen tank, and then the leaching galleys that again are already in the ground. But technically, actually, this plan, I'm sorry, I'm not sharing screen.
No, you're not.
Sorry. This plan that you see, these yellow circles here, this is basically the treatment component, and then these are the leaching galleys that come off of this area here. And again, that's an existing sanitary system.
And that's right up against 3 Mile High.
It's
Well, not right up,
road.
close.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Is that distance will not change with the proposed expansion, right? That's
No.
separate.
Well,
It's existing.
Yeah, they're not proposing to remove the existing system that was installed on
No, I'm
that.
saying the the expansion of the boat basin?
The basin's only, and I misspoke before, because I knew there was an expansion. It's going where, if you look at the overhead, there's grass areas.
Okay, so it's not going,
That's where they're expanding. Yeah, thank you. If you look at that picture right there, and Eric, you can like run the cursor across the grass areas. It's over there. We're down.
No, I'm gonna, I'll draw you a little sketch here.
There you go. Okay, there, and
Somebody cut the parking lot though.
and the other one, right?
No, well, it doesn't sound like ultimately Randy and Eric are really disagreeing. Eric is saying that as part of the ZBA, they're gonna have to address the parking and then, right?
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that they should go off to the ZBA now and then you guys wait until the ZBA decides something. I'm saying they should be working to submit a complete NRSP application. The boat basin enlargement is basically, that's the heart of the NRSP application. And they should get a complete application, everything that that we're going to ask for on behalf of the ZBA, that we usually ask for in these types of applications, get that information in, and then when that's received, that depending upon conversations we have with the applicant and information submitted, that may change things, but they're absolutely coming back before this board before they go to the zoning board of appeals. They have to legally. You are the lead agency. You need to render a determination of significance before they go to the ZBA, and you need to have all the information that you feel is necessary to render that determination.
Well, I think it's ready to proceed, and I think that there's no guarantee of a negative declaration. There's no guarantee that we don't ask for more information, but it seems like we should proceed with the process.
Last question was the lighting plan. I thought I heard the applicant say they were toning it down. Is that right?
On the storage building.
Yeah.
You might skip the landscape.
Did I skip it? Oh. Is the landscaping plan acceptable? Oh,
Yes.
yes. There you go. Okay.
we don't have any.
Move on to the next one. Thank you very much. Okay, last item. We do have one resolution after we're done here. Okay, next is the Springs General Store 2 site plan. And this one is it's Eric, it's Lou, and I see Mr. Bennett in the front row, so I know the applicant is here. Well, okay. Go ahead, Eric.
Okay, I'm just gonna call up the aerial on the property. This is basically back in front of you obviously in the memorandum, we summarized that there are a number of still outstanding issues remaining. But the last time the board reviewed this, one of the big questions was ADA accessibility, handicapped accessibility of the building. That was in June, so that was a while ago. The applicants came up with an alternative, a plan to provide handicapped accessibility. That was submitted to the fire marshal, and as well as the Disabilities Advisory Committee. That committee does not meet during the summer. They met a few weeks ago and submitted a letter to the board. What I'd like to do though is just get that alternative plan up for you. So this is the plan that was created by the applicants. You can, I don't know what I'm doing today, not sharing screen. But anyway, this is the plan. And what I'm going to do is focus in on this inset here on the top right-hand corner, which shows you that basically the idea here was to provide ADA spaces at the front of the building, but then also have a ramp that would go up to this side entrance here along the building. So the fire marshal and the Disabilities Advisory Committee reviewed this. They both find that this is not consistent with the requirements of the ADA. First of all, 2/3 of entrances need to be accessible. Also, although you could read their comments, which I attached to our memorandum, they don't feel that this meets the spirit of the ADA, essentially as it's directing the accessibility around to the side of the building and not to the front entrance. Again, that's one of the tough things with this proposal and with this site, because this is not only a historic landmark, it's within the Springs Historic District, and the facade, the front appearance of the building is really the most important aspect of that resource. So basically, we put this back in front of you because the applicants have been waiting a while for a response about accessibility. We're bringing the comments of the Fire Marshal and the Disabilities Advisory Committee to this board to see whether or not they concur with those two entities. And then we recommend that the applicants sit down with us, the planning department, the chief fire marshal, perhaps the chair of the Disabilities Advisory Committee, and try to come up with an alternative plan that does meet the ADA. I would also recommend that once that is formulated, whether it be before they come back to this board or not, that sooner rather than later, they bring this project, which will require separate approval of the Architectural Review Board, to that board, that involved agency, and get their opinions on the changes that are proposed, because almost certainly that's going to include a change perhaps to the doorways in the front of the building, but also the covered porch area that is a key aspect of the facade of this building. So that's really why this is before you this evening. We did make a note, though, that the last time the board reviewed this, they asked for more detailed information about the nature of the operation of the facility. That we have not received. You also asked for additional information about the design of the sanitary system. You have not received that. And then you also asked for more comments, more details about the proposed redesign of the parking, both in the front and the rear of the building. That's still outstanding. The applicants can clarify this, but I believe that they wanted to address the ADA issue before going too far down the road of addressing those other issues. So basically, the board should hopefully has read the comments of the fire marshal and the Disability Advisory Committee, and should determine whether or not you agree with them, and then direct the applicants accordingly. Again, I believe that they can work in-house, so to speak, with us and with those two entities. And then I think it would be very beneficial to bring an alternative design to the ARB sooner rather than later, so that they can review that. Because ultimately, if the ARB doesn't agree with any changes to this building, then the applicants are going to need to modify their proposal down the road, and that would be a delay and an inefficient process. So that's
Eric, while this is in the historic district, there is not an actual facade easement.
There is not. No, we looked into that. There was a proposal years ago to add a facade easement in conjunction with another project that never came to fruition. And I did look into the property history. That easement was never crafted and filed, so it does not exist.
That corrects.
Yeah.
That corrects our impression.
Many of us have, yeah.
They make a lot of mistakes.
All right, the applicant.
Go ahead, Michael.
Michael Shiano from InterScience Research Associates on behalf of the applicant. John Bennett from Bennett & Reed is also here representing the applicant, as well as the applicant, Daniel Bennett. Just to kind of pull back just for a second, the main purpose of this application was really to propose to convert an existing shed into a retail wine shop that would be a second use on this property. There was not supposed to be any change in square footage. It was going to be a minor change of use, no change in floor area. Questions about this use did come up, which were mentioned in Eric's memo, and John is going to mention and describe some of those, address some of those questions. But first, I just wanted to get some clarification from the board on some of the things that we have been asked to provide, and to give the board some additional information that we've learned since the last time that we were here. So at our preliminary site plan hearing on February 16th, the board indicated that they wanted to see ADA parking spaces and access to the Springs General Store that was ADA compliant, and also ADA access to the retail wine shop. Again, we're not actually proposing any changes to the Springs General Store, but when we came back, we offered it as kind of a sign of good faith that we wanted to do this. So just want to bring that up. You wanted us to consider upgrading the septic system to an IA system and consider formalizing the parking layout while keeping the rural character of the site. It was also discussed that we were going to abandon the existing kayak use. We've already addressed that, but I just wanted to say that was like one of the 4 things in your memo that was released after the preliminary site plan meeting. We then submitted an application for an ADA ramp, ADA spaces, and a more formalized parking layout, and then indicated that we were willing to upgrade the system, potentially having it as more of a bifurcated process, but we were definitely willing to do this. Since that submission and since the meeting that we had back in June, we've learned, the post and rail fence that we were proposing to control the flow of parking would require an NRSP. So if there are alternatives that we can propose, I guess because it is a fence and it is a structure, then it requires an NRSP. We still would want to do something in order to control parking, but if there's something that we can do that wouldn't require an NRSP and kind of like snowball this down, we would be willing to discuss that. And then we also, regarding the septic system, we have since spoken with some contractors who have indicated that the upgrade of the septic system will cost over $110,000. So we've had a meeting since in August with Mr. Shantz and the town senior environmental analyst, Melissa Winslow. Melissa indicated the next window for grant funding for septic systems opens in December and closes in February. My clients are still willing to do the upgrade, but it's a matter of when that happens will lie completely on whether on the grant process. I am unsure on how the IA system can be a condition of this approval unless this may be separated into phases or something, because they would not really be, and you can correct me, they would not be willing to go forward with it if they would have to pay the entire price of the upgrade cost, because it is substantial. It should also be noted that the septic system upgrade would not normally be required in this case for this change of use, because under the health department standards, the existing shed actually technically has more flow rate. I'm not sure why, that storage or this type of use has actually a 0.04 gallons per day per square foot flow rate, while a retail shop actually has 0.03 per square foot. So it actually would have less. So we wouldn't necessarily be required to do that. But again, we were showing this as kind of a sign of good faith that we wanted to improve the site. We also wouldn't really want to make the upgrade until the off season, and would hope that a minor change of use with no increase in coverage could proceed and be allowed to get a building permit, perhaps, or perhaps that this could be approved in phases with a second phase of the IALWTS contingent on whether or not my clients receive the grant. I'm not sure, but we'd like to discuss this. And then there's the comments about the ADA ramp. We understand that an ADA parking space and ADA access to retail wine shop may be necessary. However, before we discuss the comments from the ADA committee, I just want to remind the board that the ADA ramp we were proposing was basically a sign of good faith. And we would still be willing to propose one, but 2 ramps that the ADA committee recommends is starting to kind of push this project a bit farther out of the scope than what we originally envisioned. And that this minor change of use with no increase in floor area. The planning staff has also inquired about drainage and whether or not that should be installed. We are not proposing any new impervious surfaces at this time. And based on our recent observations, including the downpours that we've experienced recently, there is no real drainage issue in the current gravel parking lot. So I'm not sure whether or not this would actually be required for what we were initially proposing. that's kind of all I have to say about this, and I welcome the board's input. And John, you can talk about the review.
If I could make a few comments. So John Bennett is my name. I'm a practitioner for 40 years, 35 of them on the East End, which is where I grew up, and former planning board attorney for the town of Southampton, and have appeared before pretty much every board on the East End of Long Island in the various towns for the last 36 years. So I speak to you as someone who is, as my wife will tell you, I'm not an expert in a lot of things, but I certainly am an expert in land use. I find myself in a strange position because our attempt to make this facility, which is Daniel will tell you, is very dear to him as a resident of Springs. Something better in terms of some voluntarily offered land use improvements has now turned this into what I would suggest is unnecessarily prolonged procedure. We have to get up and running for the next season. We waited for the entire summer delay while the ADA committee looked at something that we're not required under the law to do. Now, we're not suggesting 1 square foot of change to the Springs General Store building, not 1 square foot. And your council, I'm pretty good at this stuff, but I'm not infallible, and these laws change. So I'm not saying that I'm definitely correct about this, but my understanding of the law in the American with Disabilities Act is when you're in that situation that we are, which we're not suggesting any change whatsoever to the Springs General Store building itself, we're not required whatsoever to make any sort of ADA compliant ramp. We're willing to do that. We're willing to do that. But I certainly don't want to get into a situation where I'm creating 2 ramps, one of them in front of the property. And I can just imagine, the law says you're not required to do something that is a fruitless act. I don't think it takes an informed or knowledgeable person to suggest how the architectural review board is going to review this, facade easement or not. Because I think it's a historic structure, and I've appeared before just about every historic board out here, attempting to change a facade such as this, which is a beloved site in Springs, by addition of a handicap ramp, when it's not necessary, it's not required under the law. And again, council, if I'm wrong, I'm willing to hear that. I never say this is the rule and it's always the case, but my understanding of the law is that this is not required. This is something that we're offering. So we came up with this side ramp so that we could provide handicap access in a manner that would not impact the facade. I mean, it's going to impact the building, it always does. And that's what the ADA suggests you should do, and we should provide access when we can, even though it's not required here. Access to the shed, this little shed we want to convert so that we can sell organic wines, only organic wines, or wine, let's just say wine, no spirits. And some people said we don't care what kind of alcohol it is. Well, we care. We don't want to be in competition with anyone selling spirits. We have a very small niche. We want to sell organic wines there as part of what will be available to the community. We measured the opening to this shed. This shed, by the way, where we want to put this new retail use, is 176 square feet. You know what that is? That's 4 square feet less than a parking space. So in terms of impact on the community, in terms of impact on the facade, in terms of impact on the sense of place, in terms of impact on the sense of place, you have an existing structure, no impact whatsoever on the sense of place or the aesthetics, that we want to put a very small retail wine store in. We measured it. I'll give this to Eric. My understanding is the ADA width requirements for a structure like this is about 3.5 feet. We're at about 4.5 feet. So this, for the area of the new use, it's flat, it's not raised. There's 2 doors that come out. It more than meets the access requirement. That's the nexus that you're looking for. But having said that, we're, for the purpose of comity, C-O-M-I-T-Y, and to be good citizens, and we are trying to be good citizens, we're willing to do something on the Springs General Store, but certainly not something that's going to affect the historic fabric of that structure. So again, it's something that, and if council can correct me, it's not a challenge. I view this stuff as in a cooperative nature. We have to follow the law. I don't think that there's a requirement that we provide that, but if we do, you're going to let me know. The wastewater system, in my mind, the wastewater system, the typical IA system for single-family residence, an IA system is somewhere between $40,000 and $60,000, and we were asked to do that. In particular, you wanted to see that, Mr. Cortese, and we were more than happy to do it, even though, again, we're not, again, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, we're not triggering the requirement for any wastewater system because we're not adding, and the change of use is such that the flow is less for this use. And I'm not exactly sure I know how they do that. The health department does strange things, but nevertheless, the flow for the retail space is less for the flow than the existing storage space. But again, it's something that we're offering. I can't do that. I can't afford that. We can't afford that. Not me. Daniel and his 2 partners can't afford that unless we are able to obtain the 65% grant. So our offer is to do it, but the offer is contingent upon receipt of a 65% grant. Otherwise, again, it's one of those things where and I mean this, our generosity to offer conditions where none are required is sort of like a no good deed goes unpunished thing. And I really mean that. We are, with Cornell Cooperative, we're doing a study. They're drilling wells on the property for groundwater quality. We've been very, very good stewards of the property. We're willing to do the IA system, but it's too much of an ask unless we can get the grant money. Similarly with the drainage, I mean, I was out there the other day, just, I'm not an engineer, but just for sort of a boots on the ground look at it. There's no intrusion of water. There's no trespass of water during some very heavy rains. It's functioned that way. The last time a new use was put on the site, which was the kayak use, there was no request for any sort of drainage or upgrades. You really should leave this site. There should be as little impact as possible on this site to retain that sense of place. I'm going to go through some of the questions about the uses, but there was one thing that Mr. Cortese said that I wanted to clear up in terms of this request for some on-premise consumption in the Springs General Store building itself. How that there was a suggestion that we could sort of backdooring into that. We notified the town of East Hampton of the application for the on-premises consumption on December 1st of 2021, even before the site plan application was filed. So we've been absolutely, totally transparent about that. I do want to talk about how we've thought about that to allay some of the concerns that some people may have. And I'll get to that. But one of the things I would be remiss not to say, Daniel and Evan, another partner of theirs, operate, in addition to 2 restaurants in New York, operate in Amagansett Square. That's been open for about, 3 months, Daniel? A place called Doubles, which is There have been people that have come in and said to them, as part of the conversation that they have with the proprietor, great to see you taking over the Springs General Store. You're, in so many words, you're not going to make some sort of, try to make some nightclub or bar out of that. And it's been amazingly frustrating because their idea is to take over the existing use and use it as the existing use. We can't do that. We have a certificate of occupancy for a retail store. So it's going to be another surf, whatever it is, a surf. I can't do that. That's a bar and a restaurant use. There's absolutely no intention to do this. Matter of fact, one of the things I'm going to say about the type of the use there, any will be any music, no amplified music. It came up because on the application for the liquor license, will there be any?
Yes, I can speak.
No, just you're going to speak. Yeah, no, I just want to ask a question, but the application for the liquor license, Daniel, the question was, is there going to be any music?
Any music, any live music?
Any live music? There was no intention, but for 30 or 40 years, these guys come on Sunday from, I think, 7 to 9, and they play guitar, they play bongos, they play jazz. It's like a cultural part of this unit, and that's the only thing that we intend to maintain. So one of the questions is, do you foresee any special events? No, unless you're going to describe a bunch of guys who've been doing it for 35 years, men and women have been going there and enjoying themselves. Is that a special event? No. Is that no amplified music, be it either recorded music or live music? No amplified music. There's some questions about hours of operation. For the wine store, 11 to 9. There was no question about the hours of operations of the Springs General Store and the request, but 7 to 8. A little bit longer than it's open now. For the new use, the wine store, one new employee, one per shift. It's the size of a parking space. You can only have one employee in there. Will the new use and be any part of the new use be part of the existing use, the retail use? No, except we're going to let the employee that works in the wine store use the bathroom in the Springs General Store. So that's about the only bleed over. Beer is sold in the Springs General Store. That will continue. There'll be no wine sold in there. But the idea is to sell wine, this organic wine, we'll just say wine, in this 176 square foot building. On-premise consumption at the site. One of the board members were very concerned about this, and we're concerned about this. It's interesting, really what we're trying to do, let's just be totally frank, coming into the situation and being aware of what goes on there, it goes on there now. It went on there with the people would buy a beer and they go out and sit down and drink it. That's a concern we have. So what we wanted to do was legalize it, but minimize it. So there was a question, can we control it? Yes, we would have no problem with the condition that said it could only be consumed at one of the 16 seats. And again, 16 seats are a part of what a retail use can provide. So we want to control it. We don't want to have a situation where we're concerned about some sort of what has been a historical use not being quite kosher in terms of the way these things are supposed to be handled. So again, it's sort of like we're trying to clean stuff up, but the concern is being raised about fears about something that is quite contrary to what we want to do. So those are the answers to some of the staff questions. I think we did have a revised parking scheme, and the parking scheme was revised as a result of some of the staff comments at the first meeting, and it's essentially to provide the handicap parking. So those are my thoughts. I'd like to be able to see if we can move this. I don't know if the board is going to have a public hearing on this. Can you do something? Can you approve this without a public hearing? If you need a public hearing, I'd like you to schedule it. We'd like to move this to a position where we can start building out. There are some interior renovations that we want to do to the Springs General Store, and most of them are aesthetic. We want to actually take out, well, Daniel, let me have you explain to the board what the renovations want to do and answer any questions you want to ask.
I'm Daniel Bennett, John Bennett's son, and the new owner and tenant of the Springs General Store. Christy left about 2 weeks ago, and I've been in there every day trying to figure it out. Sorry, what was the question?
No, what interior?
Oh, yeah. So it's funny that I think it was Randy actually who made the comment when they were talking about aesthetics before. He said, look around this building. This is more in line with what we want to see. That was the aesthetic I pitched to the investor 3 years ago, was basically this town hall. That building is very old. If you go in there, Christy was amazing, but she was holding that place together with Scotch tape and glue. She needed help. It was one of the first things she said once the deal was closed was, I'm so happy that you and 3 other people or 2 other people are going to be coming in here and giving this place the love and the energy that it needs, because as you can see, I've done the best I can and it's kind of crumbling down around me. The aesthetic is essentially to expose the natural wood of the building because it's been there for so long. I asked Christy why she didn't do that. She said she didn't have the time or the money, but not to get too in detail, but the ceiling goes up about 1 foot and it's this. The attic is the same. The floorboards they removed, but I have the original floorboards in the other place. I wanted to put those back. I basically wanted to bring the building aesthetically back in time, which is what you guys did here. So that has been my vision since I started this concept 3 years ago, from the very beginning, for aesthetically, for the inside. I don't have any interest in the 2 restaurants in New York. I also took over very, very old buildings, and I know that as soon as you mess with the bones and the structure, you start having to go into code enforcement and ADA stuff and all that. My intention is not to do any of that. I don't want to open up that can of worms. I really want to just expose the natural beauty of that building aesthetically.
If you have any questions about the proposed use,
yeah, I'm
totally transparent. Ask questions.
Why don't we have our customary discussion with Mr. Cortese?
Sure. Wow, this is really intense. I listened today to the last meeting that we had, the entire thing, from beginning to end. It was an hour and a half. And it was very, very enlightening to listen to it again. And, when you spoke and you became very impassioned, and, you did resonate with me on a lot of things that you said. So I'll start off by just, ticking off the things that I like about this application. First of all, I really appreciate one of the things that resonated with me that you said the last time is that, you're proud to have your sons, and you've been a part of the East Hampton community for a long time, and now your sons will be able to stay and take over a business. And, that touched me. That's important to have that kind of.
The Southampton community, my great-grandfather was from the East Hampton, but I don't want to be accused of misrepresenting.
And I do believe what you said, that you really want to do the right thing and you want to keep it a community, a landmark, and not turn it into some party scene. I don't think, but that's my personal opinion. But, I also heard some of the comments made by the board members, and they weren't addressing it to you personally. I know at one point you got a little offended. But what we were trying to say, I think it was Ian who was saying it, is that, we need to agree to certain conditions. And we need to make sure that those conditions will last. The problem is that if we don't agree to those conditions, if we just take your word, and I'm sure your word is golden, But if we just take your word, you have the right to change your mind. Or if you sell the location, whoever buys it has the right to change. We can't change them. The town cannot change their mind. So once we agree to a certain set of conditions, that's it. So we're not doing anything to frustrate you. And I understand the frustration, believe me. I get all that, that it's taking all this time and money and all these surprises with how much it's going to cost for the sanitary system. So and you want to get ready by the next season. So I get all that. But I think where I got off on the wrong foot on this whole thing, maybe we can resolve this, and it was mentioned the last time as well, is that we were, you came in and it was really a, general, ordinary application, which I thought would go off smoothly and quickly, that you were going to just turn this shed into a retail wine store for off-premises consumption. That's what I understood. It was not mentioned to us at that time. This, I think, was in December, the preliminary site plan here. It was not mentioned at that time that it would be on-premises consumption. When I found out about it, not through you, not through the meeting that we had with you, but through other meetings, that it came to the attention of the planning department that there was an SLA application for on-site premises. You could understand that, my reaction was, wait a minute, what's going on here? Are they trying to pull a fast one and, phase this in somehow? So that's why I think that's the reason why the last meeting that we had in June was one that was more intense than it should have been. But I think we got a lot of things out into the open. And, I really want to help this application along. I want to get it moving. I think, in my view, and we'll discuss this and see what other people have to say, I think we can arrive at a mutually agreeable set of conditions. And I think the way to do that is if we put in place, and you were agreeable to this the last time we met, we put in place certain restrictions. Now, I don't have any detailed descriptive restrictions right now, but I'm sure we could work something out. But it would have to do with occupancy. And by occupancy, I don't mean just the 16 seats at the tables outside. I mean people congregating on the site, if we could have a restriction with that. Also, I think you already agreed to or are willing to have a certain hourly restriction, maybe an hourly restriction as to when alcohol can be served on premises, that kind of thing. So I think if we look in that area, I think we could come to an agreement and keep this landmark site alive. And by the way, one other thing that I want to mention, I mentioned this at one of the previous applications. I'm one that really appreciates people like yourself and your son to come in and add the energy and the vibe and the money. The money is very important. You need the money because, like the previous owner, like your Daniel said, she couldn't keep up the place as it should be. So you do need money. And so I'm happy to see someone like yourself come in and revitalize an important location like this one. So I think that's a good thing, and I appreciate that. So anyway, that's where I stand. As far as the ADA thing, and you're just gonna have to work that out with all the different parties, the planning department, the ADA committee, advisory committee. I'm sorry it's taking all this long, and I understand your frustration with the bureaucracy, but if you're an attorney working in this area for 35 years, you should be familiar with this kind of.
A lot of gray hair.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, I'm sorry. I wish it couldn't be that way. None of us want it to be that way, but that's just the name of the game. And if somebody could figure out a way to grease the movement on these things, it would be great. Nobody likes that. So, and the parking, same thing, the fence, the same thing. With regard to the septic system, I really do think that that's crucial, that you put in a new IA system. I mean, that's the way things are going. I understand that the cost. There was another application in front of us, same kind of thing where they weren't required to put in the system. They voluntarily decided to do it. I've been in touch with them. They've gone through a very frustrating time, not so much with the town, but with the county. So I get all that, you know, the bureaucracy can really just come up the words. But I would really appreciate it if you could just see yourself through on this. And you can get the grant money. I don't think it's difficult to get the grant money.
It's not guaranteed.
What?
It's not guaranteed.
It's not guaranteed.
I'm not trying to interject, but that's an important interjection.
Yeah. So anyway, that's where, you know, as far as those items are concerned, I think they can get done. I really do. We just need to work out the details. We're not going to do that here tonight. We're not in the business of doing that. But we are in the business of setting the overall conditions of the agreement so that we can get to the approval stage. And I think the way to do that, like I said, is to put in some of these covenants, some of these restrictions that hopefully make everyone on the board happy and make you happy, and we can move this along. So that's all I have to say.
Yeah, I know that you both appreciate what a resource this is in the community, and you know, and I appreciate that you appreciate that. And I personally would be very happy if nothing changed with the parking or the building or any of the rest of it, quite honestly. You know, I go there, I went there virtually every day. I live nearby. But the two key issues here, and I think this requires some real clarification from council. There are two things. One, you know, a lot of people in Springs who understand that, you know, a on-premise liquor license has been applied for. You know, I think many of us don't fully understand what that would allow you or a future owner to do, right? And while your view about that may be very modest, you know, to just let people buy wine in the wine shop and sit and drink it, whatever, you don't want this to become like a party scene. I think we need to understand better that if you're successful in getting that license, what that would actually mean, right? You know, not just for you, but for a future owner. Okay, so that's one thing. Just let me The other piece of this is, you know, frankly, I think I need some clarification on what the change of use from kayak rental to wine sales actually triggers. Nancy, I'm not sure. Is Mr. Bennett correct? Is that the parking situation, ADA, you know, the approved sanitary system, that those things are not triggered by the change of use?
Well, I definitely would want to confirm the ADA.
Okay.
The others.
Some of those things may actually be triggered by the change of use.
I'm not giving you advice by any means, but I do recall when we took an ADA program, I was here, a couple of years ago, and I remember it being said to us that the ADA requirements are, I don't want to use the wrong word, but not retroactive, but that an existing facility has to make itself ADA compliant. Now, again, I am by no means an ADA expert, but if you're saying it's one way and if our council isn't sure, that's something that we need to straighten out.
I agree.
Because the one, look, I don't want to jump ahead of everybody, but the one thing that, from my perspective, that we have to get right is the ADA.
I agree.
Almost more important than anything else. That issue, and I recognize, first of all, I recognize that you had to wait the summer because the ADA committee, I guess, wasn't up for the summer. Can't blame them for that. But it's not It's not a matter of delay, any kind of deliberate delay, just it is what it was a situation that was, I don't know, not expected, but was the way it shook out. But here we are now, we want to move forward. That ADA issue has to be straightened out. And if it means that you and council have to sit down and pull out the books and figure out what the rule is, then let's get that right.
Whatever the answer is, the answer is.
Yeah, exactly. You understand. So that's the first and most important. Now, that has an interplay with the architectural considerations, because I know that, again, I'm not an expert, but I know that there are rules about access, that the ADA access basically can't be, around the corner, down back. That's not what the ADA contemplates. The ADA contemplates that there's at least an equivalence. Again, that's not a statute word, but my word. And you got to make sure that whatever the standards are that the ADA requires, that they're met. And again, I don't want to see the architectural integrity of this building impact, negatively. I don't. But at the same time, the ADA is a significant law. It's a law that we're charged with enforcing, and we're going to enforce it. So that has to get straightened out. I just wanted to jump in on that. Go ahead.
So I just want to come back to the issue of the liquor license again, right? I think we all need to be clearer. I just want to emphasize what I said earlier. We need to be clear on what the implications of having an on-premise license are. So we can understand that not only for your use and your intentions, but for the future. What we're doing, you know this, I'm certain that people in Springs are very concerned about the idea that this could become a place where lots of people are going to gather. And I know you're shaking your head, no, that's not what I intend. Maybe that is true, but we need to really understand what it is that we would be getting ourselves into if liquor authority granted that license. I'm not sure what the parameters of those licenses are.
I can answer that tonight.
You should put it in writing, like a narrative. Like, give us a narrative and writing.
The other chance to speak after we will, have our free time discussion.
That's it.
That's it? Ian?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't want to put Nancy on the spot, she knows what we're asking of her, but I do think that we just need an answer in terms of, and I want that to come from our council in terms of what the ADA requires. So I won't, don't expect it tonight.
I mean, since it was volunteer, frankly, I didn't even look into, is it actually required, but that'll be something else.
I mean, whether volunteer or not volunteer, I think it's, I don't want to penalize you if you did volunteer, but it's required, it's, that's how we're gonna proceed. Eric, I got a question for you. Sure. There's a total of 2 or 3 entrances here?
I don't know for sure. I believe
on the back.
For which?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you would say in the front, whether or not there's 2. Because there's technically 2 doorways in the front. There's 1 on the side, and then I think there's 1 or 2 in the back.
Well, what I'm getting at is
Existing doorways. Testimony.
One in the back, one on the side, 2 in the front.
2 in the front.
Well, the 2 in the front are right next to each other, which would become 1 presumably if it's ADA. But the 2/3 requirement is important because if you have to meet ADA, it's not frivolous request on their part that there's 2 that meet it. So we'll see where that falls, but I think if you have to meet it, it's.
As I said,
Yeah.
Can I ask a silly question and forgive my ignorance? When this was approved by the board to be a kayak shack, wouldn't that have triggered the ADA compliance that we now?
I'm the one who did that permit, and we never used the shack. They were just out in the back.
What's that?
So we rented the kayaks from the main store.
Right. I think it was, but it was approved
It was
for the
approved
shack.
as separate use, but no,
Right.
the shack was never involved.
Oh, really?
Storage shed.
Separate use is approved, it has site plan approval for separate use.
Let's go back.
Well, anyway, I was just.
I appreciate that you have questions, but I don't want it to get in the way of
No.
the conversation.
Yeah, of course. Sorry about that.
Let's go.
Yeah, and I think regardless whether it was done properly in the past or not, I mean, we want to follow the law, so we'll see what that. And beyond following the law, I think we have the ADA committee, and I think their opinion is very important. I think I agree with the applicant that I don't think this should, if they don't meet all summer, I don't think we should actually delay something like this for that to come around. However, we've heard from them and we want to try to honor their opinion, whether it's technically or not. It seems like you're in the same spirit of that. So we'll see what's legally required. If it's required, you know, you have to do it. If not, do the best you can. We'll try to make everybody.
If not, we're still willing to have something.
I think the ARB is going to be important here too, and I always am very deferential to the ARB in terms of architecture. I don't want to step on any toes, but if we need to fix the entrance, we need to fix the entrance, and you know they're going to have to understand that, and we'll do the best we can in that context. But we'll see if that becomes a thing. You know, as far as the liquor license, I think it'd be great to see that. I think we do need clarity because there are some, you know, we just need clarity on that in terms of what it means. Like, is it truly a retail store? If people are buying it and consuming on site, does that change anything from a health department standpoint? We're gonna wanna make sure that all the permitting is consistent. And like everybody else, you know, it's a special place. Appreciate you guys wanna keep it generally the same. I don't object to wine or whatever else you're selling, but we want the overall feel to be the same. Right now, I think your main issue is ADA. I do think that the parking circulation that we talked about, fence, I think is a good idea. I'm not sure if NRSP is a deal breaker for you or not on that, or what other solutions there are, but that open parking plan, especially if you're having wine that's purchased on site and consumed on site, it's worthy of, and again, I don't think any of us were too aggressive about saying, pave it, delineate it, you know, have one-way traffic, or just something to contain it. And I think that should still be an open-ended question.
That the parking is part of its set.
My thoughts are the thoughts of the previous board members, and I would only be repeating. So.
Yeah, no, I think, as you can imagine, I get asked all the time, what's going on with Springfield store? Because I used to own it, and I'm at the farmer's market, and it's a big conversation. And the residents of Springs' biggest concern is the drinking on premises. And you probably know that already, you know? So I think a narrative, being really clear, covenants and restrictions on that aspect of this application is going to be really, really important to that community. And I think, you know, the ADA is obviously really important and all the other rules, but that is the one thing and that everybody's concerned about. And, you know, and I believe you that, and you're right. I mean, I own a Springfield store. People did grab a beer and go sit outside and have a beer. So if your intention is just to be completely transparent, that's nice. But that is limiting the numbers on the property. I think, you know, you might want to think about that, what that means. And, you know, and what it means to the parking, and that'll be the planning department that's going to have to look at it on that lens when you now have it as on premise, whether, you know, you have a sufficient bathroom situation and all of that. But that I will leave up to the planning department once that permit is even granted to you, right? Yeah. Yeah, that's
Yeah, I thought John did a good job, and his son, of explaining. And I agree with the other board members. I think it's ADA. You know, frankly, I don't think anybody really wants to see a big ramp construction there, and that what they've proposed as a maybe not required solution is about the maximum anybody would want to see if it's required at all. I agree with Sharon. I think right now, I think John's correct. You know, you can buy beer there. Some people take a can of beer and sit at the tables outside and drink it. So one of the questions I have for our council is, my understanding is that if the New York State Liquor Authority issues their typical license for, let's say, on-site consumption, and we, as a condition of our approval, limit that to less than what the New York State Liquor Authority has allowed, will it stick? Or can the owner say, well, look, I have these conflicting approvals. I have this from the liquor authority. It's a state agency. They're more powerful. And so I shouldn't have to abide by this condition. So that's one of my concerns. I don't know if, as we're trying to tailor some conditions, it sounds to me like, are we talking about the sale? Are we potentially talking about the sale of bottles of wine that people could open and drink? Are we talking about the store, either the wine store or the general store? Are we talking about them being able to pour you a glass of wine with your sandwich that you could take outside and drink? This goes partly to the applicant. What is it that they would like to do? They're saying they don't. I wouldn't be able to get a vodka martini with my ham sandwich. They don't want to serve that. But do they want to be able to pour a glass of wine at the store, either the wine store or the general store? Because that would probably help us draft some condition, again, which will be probably more restrictive than the New York State Liquor Authority. And then I think we could go. I think I find John's really to ask an applicant to spend $110,000 on a new system without grant money guarantee. I think that's unreasonable, and that we, if they're willing to say, contingent upon 65% grant, I think that's fair. I don't have any problem with that. The fence, I don't know if you could put an anchor out there or something instead of and that wouldn't be a structure. But the easiest thing, of course, would be to try to see if you can move the fence out of the jurisdiction. But that's about it.
Thank you. I'll say at the outset, I think that nearly every issue you have, other than the ADA, can be addressed with covenants and restrictions. And that's just, the legwork of sitting with planning, sitting with council, figuring out something that you can live with, presenting it to the board, having us, toss it back and forth, and making sure that we come up with something that, as Sharon rightly pointed out, is going to address the concerns of the Springs community. I know that the issue is that we're not going to create a hang-up. Well, nothing. It is a hang-up. Because you were talking before about the right kind of hang-up. Right. Because you were talking before about the Sunday evening music. Randy, I'm sure you played guitar on that porch on a Sunday evening. Right?
With Joe Potter, probably.
Yeah, with Joe Potter, yeah, precisely. I know, because I was there. But and that's the community. That's the aspect of the community that we hope, and frankly, I believe you want to reflect. That's the idea, is that you've got a resource here, a historical, beloved resource that is essential to this community. And we don't think you're going to believe, I don't. You're going to deliberately go in and, muck it up. I don't think that's what you want to do. At the same time, though, as Ed rightly points out, you may not own it forever. And somebody comes along later and they don't have your sense of history, and they don't have your sense of place. And they might take advantage, undue advantage, of an unrestricted use that would be granted. So getting back to what I just said at the beginning, covenants and restrictions are what it's all about here. Sit down with the planning department, sit down with council, and come up with something. And I think that what you're getting from the board at this meeting is a degree of understanding and a degree of appreciation for where you're coming from. And I think I see it from you that you appreciate our concern. You may have made a misstep here and there about discussing how you want to be able to sell a bottle of wine and let the people sit down and, you know, drink it on the porch. And maybe that'll work and maybe that won't. But it can be worked out. I'm confident that it can be worked out. So the only issue here is really that you're gonna have to, you know, make hard choices about, and we're gonna have to make hard choices about, is the ADA stuff. After that, I think it can all be worked out.
I just say one quick
Yeah, go
thing.
ahead.
It's really nice that we have actually an owner that's gonna run the store.
Yeah.
Because that's what, you know, I rented the store, Christy rented the store, the landlord's never fixed it.
Yeah.
So it's really, really nice that you will be able to fix the building, you'll own the building, you'll run the business, and that's really nice.
Also, you were about to answer Randy's question. I'm curious.
Yeah,
What
sure.
about how will customers buy the wine? How will we serve it?
So the concept, the idea for this whole thing is based off California and France. When you go to France, you can walk into a grocery store, you can buy a bottle of wine, you can buy some pate and cheese, and then you can sit down in the grocery store and open up your bottle of wine and drink it and eat your cheese and pate. You can do the same thing in California. You cannot do that in New York without having two separate liquor licenses that are separated from a structure. So you have to have a retail first, which allows you to buy the wine and take it home if you want. And then once you exit that building, you have to have an on-premise. That allows you to drink that wine in that area.
Do you as the owner of the store have to open that bottle of wine?
If they take it out of the retail store and they say, you know what, we want to watch the sunset and drink it here, then yes, I have to open up the wine for them. And if they want to take it home, I have to staple the receipt to it and close the bag and put the cork in and give it home.
This is why there are lawyers in New York who only do SLA.
And I'm very good friends with one of them, which is why I know all this stuff. The two other.
And did you have to hire an expediter?
Yes, it did.
you
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, so I'm very familiar with liquor. The restaurants I have in the city have liquor licenses till 2 a.m. Obviously, all the boards, when I went in front of them, said absolutely not. And we got them, and we have never had a single noise complaint. We've never had a 311 call. We've never had any issues with the SLA. We play by the book. Always. That's all on record.
If I just wanted to talk about a couple of things though. It's one of the things that goes on here is you can have 16 seats under the code section, and it mirrors the health department. So a retail store can have 16 seats, but it has to be single service. So all the owner can do in the scenario just described is open the bottle, but hand you a paper cup.
Yeah.
Can't even hand you a glass and clean it. You could buy I guess you could buy a glass or something and take it out, but you can't. There can't be any. It's a gray water generation thing. So it's actually very, very limited. And in terms of number of people on the site, we really welcome that as an ability to say to people, you know, you can't just hang out here. You know, we have to limit this because we'll get in trouble not only with the state, but we'll get in trouble with the town.
Randy, and more important than that, with the community.
No. Absolutely. Well, I see you guys as a reflection. And, you know, trust me, I don't want anyone coming up to you guys saying, what the hell did you let them do that for? How'd you create this space? No, seriously. No, seriously. Because it's not, they have one restaurant, or, well, I would describe doubles. It's like,
It's the same 16 seats.
16 seats, which is in any event, it's in Amagansett Square. It's where the Dosa place used to be. So it's true. I'm not pitching it, but it's great. In any event, so there's only a limited amount of activity that can go on there. Randy, if I have a liquor license that allows me to do certain things, but I have a condition contained in a town approval that further limits it, I not only would be in violation of the condition, if you want to put in a covenant, it'd be in violation of the covenant, and under your East Hampton code, I'm pretty sure that a violation of a condition in the site plan approval and or a violation of a covenant is at very least a violation, if not a misdemeanor.
You will have.
We just need to be clear.
Yeah, no.
We need to be really clear.
For whatever it's worth, I'm very glad that my son Daniel and my son Evan and their respective partners are restaurateurs and not in the gin mill business. So for whatever that's worth, because that's not the idea here. I drive past some of these sleepy places in Montauk. There used to be sleepy places in Montauk. I'm not going to name any names, but I say to myself, how the hell did that happen? The neighbors must be in arms. We don't want to be on that list. You really don't want to be on that list.
Nope, we're gonna.
And however you want to craft the conditions, you'll have a willing partner with us.
Good.
One other thing I want to say, because you had said it before about public hearing, this is going to go to public hearing, I think. I feel
So
like
can we
it's all-
establish, can we set one down?
Well, I think you got to figure out the ADA.
You're not ready.
You can't.
You're not there.
Okay.
But I just want to prepare, I think that I'll vote for it, I think most people will.
Yeah, and on this one, you
Okay,
can
well,
almost.
that's fine. I would like to obviously
understand.
get to that as quickly as we can. The other thing is, I have to, in terms of the timing, and then I'll let
Yeah,
you
we
guys
have
go.
to press
But
the
this is
button.
really important because substantively, you need to understand this. I can't back myself into my willingness to try to create something less than like one big curb cut. I can't back myself into a natural resources special permit. I've got to I'll move it out of the jurisdiction.
That's, I think, a separate issue that you can probably address without all the worry that you have regarding other things that are immovable.
Right. And then finally, I'm going to have to stage this somehow. If we get to the point where we're putting an IA system in, and I can't do it without the grant, but if we get it, I'm going to have to, and I don't know how you could condition it, but I'm going to need the season after next season on the off season, the downtime, to be able to put that in. Otherwise, I'm just never going to get through the natural resources special permit section.
And I should say, I agree with Randy. It's an awful large nut.
And Eric, you agree that it's not triggered, right?
I'll look into it further, but my understanding is that it is not. In fact, I was looking.
Well, we should really confirm that.
Absolutely have.
I'm pretty confident of that, but that's what you should
There is a
confirm.
member of the public that does want to speak here.
Oh.
We're not in public hearing, all right? But we do accept public comments at these meetings.
It's your board.
Can you keep it under a minute? Is that possible?
2.5.
2. Yeah, we're coming up on a 3-hour mark. If you're gonna give us documentation.
You don't have to read it. You don't have to read it. It's for the file.
Well, then submit it to the.
Have your name and address, sir.
It's my own.
All right, 2 minutes, go.
Okay. So I've given you a letter which you can peruse at your leisure. I'm going to skip to the bottom of page 2. So I assume that you all understand the history in terms of the 2 separate liquor law SLA applications. And you're also probably familiar with the fact that the town attorney, in response to the Vendon lease application for retail on-premises consumption, objected to it and said that we'll be happy to address it after the site plan application is heard and decided by the planning board. So I just want you to understand that the license that Vedon Fleece LLC has applied for is an RW 341, which is a restaurant wine license, which allows a person to serve beer, wine, and cider in a restaurant for on-premises consumption. The restaurant must have a kitchen and full menu. The sale of unopened beer to go is allowed. Skipping to the bottom of page 2. It's my understanding that both applications, both the wine store and the Vedon Fleece on-premises retail consumption, restaurant wine as it's termed, were both submitted. And these are 2 very different applications. And they continue to be processed by the SLA during the pendency of the planning board site plan application, even though the town attorney had objected to it and said we should revisit this SLA so that we can impose stipulations, which is often done in a SLA grantable license. If the town requires certain stipulations and they come to an agreement with the applicant, they go into the license. That hasn't happened. I understand that the Springs General Wine Shop LLC application, that's the second one that you were made aware of fully from the beginning, has been scheduled on the agenda of the SLA full board's next public meeting on October 12th. I have no qualms or concerns about that aspect of the site plan application, other than to wonder whether it is physically feasible to store and sell bottles of wine and cider for off-premises consumption in the existing antiquated and minimalistic shed structure without requiring major renovations and improvements. However, I've also read on the Liquor Authority Mapping Project website that the Beat on Fleece LLC application for a license to sell wine, cider, and beer by the glass for on-premises consumption at a restaurant with a full menu was, quote, sent to the license board for action, unquote, on September 12th.
All right, listen, your letter, you handed it in. It's going to be part of the record.
Let me just give you one sentence.
No, you've already done.
Well, please, I've gone over what, 3 minutes?
Go ahead.
I don't think so. I'm not familiar enough with the SLA license application procedures to really know what that means. However, to the extent that it might indicate that the SLA is in the process now of possibly approving the application for a restaurant wine on-premises consumption license, that should be a matter of great concern to this board. I urge you to require the site plan applicant, Springs General Real Estate LLC, that's the owner of the property, but by the way, it's not the Bennett's. Well, I ask you to require that its tenant, Beat on Fleece, withdraw or suspend or terminate its SLA application for a restaurant wine on-premises alcohol beverage control license. The site plan application now before you makes no mention of a full-on restaurant.
Thank you.
I have to, you have to let me, I insist on it. No, because.
Go ahead.
Okay, let's begin.
Just a minute, go ahead.
There are boxes that you can check on the SLA application. One of the boxes is not retail store with 16 seats. Restaurant is what you can apply for. That's all you can check on the box if you want to have on-premises consumption. I've said this till I'm blue in the face to the town attorney, to the deputy town attorney. There's not a space for retail with 16 seats. That's the nature of the application you make. This is not some camel's nose in the tent or some misrepresentation. It's not a restaurant. It's not.
What about the idea of trying to, I mean, I'm not sure what you can do, but final SLA approval if it happens to make sure it matches our approvals?
Well, I'm going to work out covenants with you, and those will be binding. The SLA is going to look at me like this is, they're.
You don't need to go. I understand. The answer is this. We have counsel. We have resources. We're going to be guided by what counsel tells us. If counsel tells us that you're getting X type of liquor license, and I know there's 16 different types of liquor license, not more, that the type of liquor license you got allows you to do what is ultimately agreed to in the covenants and restrictions, then the board will vote on that, and presumably, you'll get a result. Yeah, you'll either live with or you won't live with. But our intention would be to have something that would be legal and that will stand up and that will remain in place even after your son may one day sell.
If I offer it as a condition, I can't later complain about it.
You and I don't need to get into that conversation. Point is that we're going to be guided. If counsel tells us that you offered it and we're stuck with it, then that's fine. I know you're saying.
If you pulled it out of me, I can then sue you.
Yeah.
If I offer it as a condition, I can't later complain about it.
I really, it's 9:35. I want to.
No,
we're done. We're done. And to Mr. Buddha, your letter will, if you submit it, it'll be part of the public record. And as we do with everything, all the board members will read.
Thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
And we'll have a public hearing.
Yes, and then, well, you're getting
To adjourn.
Thank you very much. Speaking of public hearings, whose one is true?
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna have one, I mean, thankfully, one item on left, and that is, Ian. Yeah.
The matter of the Cookery Sin and Trudy site plan, scheduled public hearing for Wednesday, October 19th, 2022 at 7 p.m. or sooner after this matter may be heard. I've read the resolution, move for adoption.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Yes. 7-0.
I make a motion.
Please, make that motion.
I made that motion.
Second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Pass 7-0. Our next meeting is October 19th, correct?